This evening, we're going to go ahead and go through our regular agenda items, and then after what I think will be a brief regular meeting, we'll go into the public speaking portion. Thanks. All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Tammy Agnini.
Present.
Shane Dowdy.
Present.
Cheryl Deming. Rosemary Aldrich.
Present.
Anna Yeva.
Present.
Cheryl did email me stating that she would be unable to attend the meeting and asked that you please excuse her absence. If you could make a motion to do that, please.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to excuse Cheryl from this meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the minutes from our last meeting and get a motion out there to get those approved. Mr. Dowdy, did you say you did not receive a copy?
No, I didn't.
Does anyone have an extra copy of the minutes?
I've got it right here. Yeah. If I need to.
Do we need to reconfirm his address to the board members who didn't get a packet?
No, I explained to them, possibly the issue is everybody else got comments.
I can't remember, denied it, I got the package because I didn't.
I hate it.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 15th meeting of the Board, Historic Preservation Board.
We have a motion, do we have a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, we have a housekeeping item. We had some discussion at the last meeting, and a few meetings before that, when we had discussed potentially moving the time of our meeting from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. I'm in favor of doing that because I feel that it would be a benefit to the public as well as an accommodation of our work schedules, because it does get challenging to get here at 4 o'clock, and I think it's challenging for applicants and members of the public as well. We need to do a motion and vote on that if we are still interested.
Yes, I absolutely agree. You guys know half the time when I'm absent it's because I'm stuck at work. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the only reason I wouldn't be here. And I think our work schedules, I think originally we had this at 5:30, and then it was changed. I thought initially it was to just accommodate one applicant, but then it sort of morphed into keeping it at 4 o'clock. And so I'm in favor of moving it to 5:30 as well.
All right.
So I'll make a motion to move our meetings to 5:30. I guess we're gonna keep this, the standard Wednesday, was it second Wednesday of the month? Third
It's the
Wednesday.
third.
So, yeah,
There had been a discussion of moving it to the 4th. I don't know that we need to consider that at this time. I think we can just do a change of, the week. It doesn't matter to me, but just for ease, we'll say the 3rd week and 5:30.
So my motion will be 5:30, then it still remains the third Wednesday of the month.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. New time is 5:30. Everybody will be happy about that. All right, so we have one agenda item to vote on this evening, PM1. We have a staff report and some drawings. Staff, could you read the background, please?
Yes, for the record, I'm Russ Gibson, Director of Planning and Development Services. We've received a request for certificate of appropriateness for 1317 Park Avenue. The property is located in the old Sanford Residential Historic District and consists of one single-family dwelling. Built in 1935 with additions noted in 1960. The house is occupied by the property owners. On about 2 months ago, specifically July 21st, the Sanford Police Department responded to a motor vehicle that crashed into the home. The crash resulted in substantial damage to the house, including the 12 by 15 room addition on the south side. Consequently, the property owner is requesting a certificate of appropriateness to do 4 things that are listed in your staff report. Number 1 being repair and rebuild the 12 by 15 room. Number 2, remove asbestos siding and repair, replace with new siding to match existing. 3, replace 7 windows to match in design and placement. And number 4, to add railing to the front porch steps and rebuild and or repair cracked porch and replace front stairs with wood. Staff has concluded that proposed work is authorized pursuant to the requirements of Schedule S, Historic Preservation, City of Sanford Land Development Regulations, and recommends the Historic Preservation Board grant approval and issue a certificate of appropriateness to permit the work as requested. Be happy to answer any questions. The applicant and property owner, Mrs. Fusco, is here to further answer any questions you may have.
Why do we have this second drawing? Is it the same thing as we had in our packet, Russ, or?
Yes,
Okay.
Commissioner.
So it's just a duplicate?
It actually has further details like
Okay.
dimensions that were not included on the drawings that were in your agenda packet.
Could the applicant come forward, please? If you could just introduce yourself and your address for the record.
I'm Charlie Fusco at 1317 South Park.
Do you have anything to add to the remarks?
No, I just need to get this done.
And I chatted with Mr. Gibson before the meeting. I was asking who prepared the staff report because it's not as detailed as what we're accustomed to seeing. In particular, I see that there are, the drawings came in with no dimensions, which was a big, that was definitely a missing detail. And then I see there are some photos that have come in that are on the PowerPoint, which is good because usually we have photos included in the staff report. There's no reference in the staff report to what Schedule S says about the architectural style. Typically, we have it's analyzed with regard to like what Schedule S says about each of these requests. This is a very complex project, as you can tell. And there's no discussion of what materials are being used or proposed. So
You know,
there's-
they were on the second submission. It says that they're wood, it says the same siding that exists on the house, and so forth. The
Well,
same window sizes.
Now, it was my understanding that the siding is the asbestos siding you're gonna be removing.
We're taking that off, but underneath it is like a lap siding. And so we would hope to restore it, if not to get some duplicated to finish it out.
So are you removing the existing siding from the whole house?
Yes.
Because I don't think do I see that on the application?
It has to be, Christy Dalton spoke to us extensively about it, she came and visited. And she said that, you know, if it's the whole section is removed, then the rest of the house has to all match. So that's what we're doing, we're taking it all off. To make it more historic.
I guess it's confusing because number 2 says remove asbestos siding and repair, replace with new siding to match existing, but it's not detailed.
Well,
Is that what you mean, Mr. Chairman?
Right, we usually,
Have
have,
more detail.
well, yeah, it talks about, like, for example, the materials, the design, the examples of what types of materials, and then what Schedule S says, the requirements are.
I did
And
include the
to be
photo.
clear though, I'm not saying you've done anything wrong,
No.
it's just that this is incomplete, this is what the city staff prepares, and so that's what's missing, so it's not, you have not done anything.
There is a photo though, in the package that we sent of photos that shows the siding that's underneath.
Is that what we didn't receive in our packet, but maybe on the PowerPoint? I would
It's
expect the
painted
staff
green.
report to be like 4 pages long for a project this complex, and it's just about 1.5 pages, so.
So the photo I'm looking up there in the top right, can you tell me, where is that on the house?
It's on the side on 14th Street.
No, is that the place that was,
No, the place that you see on the first photos here, face Park, on the left. And then the one at the bottom and on the side are on the side of the house, face on 14th.
and is there a picture that shows the siding that's underneath that asbestos siding?
I included it in the photographs we submitted, which it's painted green, and it shows the lap siding or shiplap, whatever you call it.
I think the issue is we didn't receive any pictures, so what we've received from city staff is not complete, and that's concerned with being able to vote on this. We don't have the information that we're provided typically by the historic preservation officer, who's a credentialed professional in that he can do this type of report. Usually includes a lot of comprehensive material. Unfortunately, the staff member that worked on this staff report didn't give us the details we're used to seeing. We didn't receive any pictures.
We submitted them to Christine.
Are these the pictures?
These are some of them.
Some of them, we do have all of the photos that the applicant provided, and Sabrina's in the process of being able to show each and every one if that's the board's interest.
So that lap siding underneath was the original probably,
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
So you're going to remove this and then replace it, try to restore what's underneath, and then if it can't be restored, are you planning to?
Buy the replacement pieces that are made to match it.
Did staff discuss with you like the requirements of the siding and how it would probably potentially, it has to match in dimension and size and all that? What about the windows?
The windows that are on the front of the house, see, not this, those are the jalousies that were in this room. There should be a photo of the front. Okay, you see those windows? Those are those 6 across there are the ones that are original, and we'll have the ones made that match that, to go 2 on the front, 3 on the side, 2 on the back side.
So you're planning to have them made or ordered from, they'll be wood.
Yes.
Are they, what, are they, single hung, double hung? How many lights? I mean,
It's just the top and the bottom, just like these.
1 over 1? Yeah. Well, we don't know what those look like because I can't, it's a dark picture and it's,
Sorry.
it's not as big at all.
Usually we get like
Like
the
a screen over it.
manufacturer of the window, we get a detail of what type it is, so that we know what you're putting back. That's,
Well, I was just given 2 sources that make these windows for the historic district, so whatever they produce. It's not like Pella or something, it's somebody who does this.
What is the staff, can you tell us more about the architectural style of this home?
It's generally a French vernacular, and the elements that the owner desires to replace and or repair are consistent with the requirements or the elements of that style home as outlined in Schedule S.
are you, so is this whole structure is coming down?
The side room?
Yeah, that whole
Yes.
12 by 15, so it's all coming down,
It
right?
has to be.
So, do we have, any detail on the roofing material? The type of roofing that's going back on that room?
It will be what's on the rest of the house. Yeah, that was just put in there last year.
Architectural shingles?
And it'll be a gable roof to match the styling.
Now, is a gable roof consistent with that style and period of home?
Yes.
As the flat roof was not.
What was the year of construction on that addition?
The records indicate the 1960s.
You really don't wanna keep those jealousy windows?
I can let it go.
I know that'll be hard for
I
you.
didn't want to let it go this way.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's scary. I'm glad nobody
At
returned.
least you weren't sitting in the room, right?
And it's the room that our dog stays in and our grandkids stay in, so, yeah, on a Saturday. So
That was
it's
my
better.
Saturday. All right, can we talk about the porch? I don't know what the proposed railing looks like, no photos, no drawings,
There is a drawing.
what's the material?
It's in here, right?
Okay. What's the material of the railing?
There it is.
Wood. There is a drawing, an architectural drawing, with all of this decisions. I have the larger print if you would prefer to look at it. I brought it with me.
And what are the steps currently made of?
Concrete. that is just, an example in the historic district on Elm Street of one that was allowed to, permitted. And that's the same kind of railing that we're thinking of, connecting to the columns that exist, and then the railing with the pineapple fences that match our fence.
Does, do you know, or staff may answer, are those columns, original?
Yes,
They are.
there were.
Do we have we typically have our Schedule S, booklets, so we can look up to see since staff didn't provide what Schedule S says about any of this. I guess we'll have to do it on the fly.
I'm concerned that the railing isn't consistent, but I don't know.
Schedule S says
because-
about removing brick steps.
We're not removing
No,
them,
no.
we're just gonna build up.
Oh, okay.
And
She said she wanted
deeper stairs and a deeper porch, so that it's safer for us as older people and also for our guests.
Madam Chair, just one point, if I may. Okay. Y'all can obviously, determine what kind of staff reports you want, but one important thing to recognize is that when an applicant comes before you and staff says it complies with Schedule S, absent some proof to the contrary from a member of the audience or somebody, and not from y'all, they're entitled to approval.
You're entitled for us to vote on it, you mean?
They're entitled to approval.
Who is?
Any applicant who comes before you, filed an application, staff says it complies with land development regulations, Schedule S, or whatever, absent proof from somebody to the contrary, the applicant's entitled to approval.
So if someone just saw this and rubber stamped, it complies, which is all it says, we just have to believe it?
You have to react to the evidence presented before you. The evidence is the staff report and the applicant. Thus far, I don't know if anybody else is confused.
I just have a question, because you mentioned this a minute ago about, are you extending the porch?
Yes. It really is not a safe landing. It's a little too short. And it's too tall.
And the roof?
It had been
Actually,
altered.
I do see that. Now, you're gonna put wood over the concrete steps. Is
That's
that-
correct.
I saw that somewhere in here, yeah.
Which was what it was originally, before somebody poured a very tall piece of concrete to the top, and it's not safe. It's quite a bit off from the other stairs.
I understand that, because I think whoever did these concrete steps did my original ones too. There's a bunch of them in town that look all the same.
I've had
Brick
several
and concrete.
people fall, it's very dangerous.
I understand.
I move to approve the application for COA at 1317 Park Avenue based on finding that proposed alteration is consistent with the purpose and intent of and complies with specific design guidelines contained within Schedule S.
Alright, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Are you gonna say specifically, or are we gonna, or no? No.
I'll second. Alright, we have a motion and a second, all in favor? I still don't feel like I have enough information.
My only concern is that the application doesn't say that it doesn't even request replacing the siding on the rest of the house. I mean, the application looks like it's for just the 12 by 15 room. And so I'm not sure, is that what we're approving? What are we approving? Is it just?
That's why I wondered if you shouldn't say specifically.
You are, I mean, you
it doesn't.
No, it
It does not. The application is what it's for. This staff report says what what is sought for approval. A motion to approve approves the 4 items.
Okay.
Well, Lonnie, can I not get clarification on number 2? Because it's vague.
Excuse me?
Number 2 is just vague to me.
And number 3 doesn't mention materials, it just says design and placement. You could get the window design to look like wood, placed in the same spot, but it would be wood, and it's not, doesn't say anywhere in here that it has to be.
The applicant, as our staff, is asserting that the materials are gonna match the existing or the requirements of Schedule S.
What about the siding? I mean, I'm looking at the application. Tear down, rebuild 12 by 15 room, remove and replace, material to match.
To match existing, she's saying the existing is underneath.
Underneath, what's under it.
But,
I was told that was exactly what we had.
but you're specifically asking us to do the whole house, correct?
Correct. And that was what was indicated on the drawings. It shows it on all 4 sides. If you look at the drawings, you'll see siding and wood.
No, it's an as-built, right?
So, better, or maybe not the entire house and go back to the original, is what you're asking to do.
It is.
Now motion's on the table. I mean, can they put it in their motion can we add, I mean, they didn't really, I don't know that conditions are necessary, I just feel like it's kind of bare.
That's the basic motion. An applicant comes in and applies for something. This is what the applicant applied for. That's what they're entitled to a decision on. Staff has said it complies with Schedule S. I don't know if anybody else is gonna come and testify to the contrary, but that's where you're at. Oh, did you close public hearing, by the way? Did anybody else? You didn't call for anybody to call. Okay,
No,
well,
is
you
there
need to do
anyone
that
in the
before the
audience that
motion.
would like to come forward and speak about this matter?
Yeah.
I would propose you guys table the matter until you have the adequate.
Could you come up and speak, introduce yourself and
I'm just a member of the community. My name's Andra Armstrong, and I was just saying, if you guys don't have enough detail to rule on the application, with the details for the report, I would recommend tabling it and then helping this lady figure out exactly what she needs to do, because it seems like there's confusion on the process and what she needs to do, and I've certainly been there, and it's really helpful when you have help from someone with the city that can direct you to the right places.
Well, we did have Christine Dolphin, and she advised us all of these things that I'm saying here tonight. And this is an extreme hardship. This is not just to, just to decide I want to redo my house and I can wait.
Right.
We have to move
Oh,
out.
Madam
of
Chair,
the
I don't know what that is.
Well,
That's-
staff
that's-
meeting
that's
might
not-
come back.
That's not testimony.
Right.
Yeah.
Alright, thank you.
Just follow your S code. If you don't have enough information, go on that.
Staff, will you be working, you'll be able to work with her, provide guidance throughout the rest of the process?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you feel like you have enough information to move forward with your project? Do you have any questions for us or for staff that would?
I've read everything in that 17, 18 pages in the historic section. I went through item by item. I went through it with my builder. I've gone through it with them. I went through it with Christine. I think I know.
Okay. Alright, well, we do have a motion and a second. So I'll go ahead and call for another vote. All in favor?
I
Aye.
made the motion, so.
Alright, motion passes. Good luck with your project. So where would it be appropriate to have the conversation about just what the expectation would be for staff reports if we wanted to ensure that they continue to be provided with the same level of detail that we're used to?
During, staff reports at the end of the meeting, sort of at the end of the meeting.
If I may, Madam Chair, I would even suggest, if not during discussion at today's meeting, perhaps at your next meeting, we could even have a work session as you deem acceptable.
Thanks. All right, let's just take a quick spin through the minor reviews and the 6-month reviews.
Yeah, I've looked through them.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, let's move on then to code enforcement reports.
Yeah, actually, I saw these on these ones.
All right, are there any questions on code enforcement reports?
No.
All right, so there are a lot of folks here this evening, and I want to begin by thanking everyone for coming out. It means a lot to me to see so many members of city leadership and concerned citizens. The reason we are gathered here today is to provide the opportunity for city leadership to address the board and provide clarification on the new direction that the city is going in with regard to historic preservation in Sanford. In the interest of time, the board is going to speak first, followed by members of the public, and this will afford city staff the opportunity to record any questions that come out of the conversation, and then allow city leadership to comprehensively answer them at the end. Before we begin, I do want to set proper expectations with a few ground rules. To all of the audience and speakers, I expect you all to conduct yourselves politely to everyone in this audience, this board, and to our elected officials. I'm not going to place a time limit on addressing the board, but as chairperson, I will reserve the right to end your conversation if it becomes disrespectful or unhelpful. And I would ask if there's anyone in the audience this evening that doesn't understand the guidelines. As chairman, I have done some soul searching. I did prepare a statement that I'm going to read, help me keep on track. And then I have some other statements from Mrs. Deming, who wasn't able to be here this evening. She is out of state. And then the rest of the board will speak, and then we'll, we've got the papers. If anyone in the audience has not filled one out yet, please do so and hand it over to our board secretary, and then you'll get on the list to speak. On Monday, September 10th, 2018, Christine Dalton, the city's highly qualified historic preservation officer and community planner, was summarily and unilaterally fired without cause. I was extremely alarmed and distressed to hear this news. I sent an email requesting an emergency meeting of HPB so that city leadership could inform us of the situation and address our questions. The only response I received was from Mr. Presley, informing me that he would not be available until after his upcoming vacation and that we could have a special meeting after the 20th. Sensing the inappropriateness of his response, City Attorney Lonnie Groot immediately acted and arranged for a conference call between the three of us. I was then able to speak to Mr. Presley, who informed me that Ms. Dalton's position was being eliminated due to restructuring and going in another direction. He assured me that Schedule S would continue to be enforced and that this board would continue to be supported as it always had by a staff member. He declined to discuss the issue further as it was a personnel issue. I continued to push for an emergency meeting to be scheduled last week, but my request fell on deaf ears. Blind eyes. It was an email. Other board members expressed their thoughts, and finally a response was provided that we would be addressed at this, our regular meeting. I'm very disturbed to have had this board's request ignored and ultimately denied. However, I was grateful for the quick responses from Mayor Triplett and Commissioners Woodruff and Austin. They seemed to be as surprised by this news as I was. Misinformation continued to spread as city leadership scrambled to figure out what was going on. Even our elected officials were not provided with the facts, which led to more frustration when they were not able to provide accurate information to their constituents. The city finally issued a statement 4 days later on Friday. only after news leaked and went viral on social media. Even then, the responses from commission and leadership were extremely watered down. The city cannot comment on staffing or personnel issues for legal reasons, but it seems that this decision was strategically made without informing stakeholders. Ms. Dalton's own direct supervisor, who reviewed her work for 13 years, was not even aware until after the fact. This, followed by the back and forth and backpedaling with no mitigation and plan, is gross incompetence. Do you really think that taking Sanford in a different direction is a good idea? That decision proves that you do not have the best interest of the city at heart. You're running a historic city with a potential and trajectory of becoming the next Savannah, Charleston, or St. Augustine, and you want to take it in a different direction? Sanford was Central Florida's best kept secret for decades, but suddenly Sanford is hot. Why? Because we have something special here that no one else has. It's all built on the back of historic preservation and the risks that people took long ago, before it was cool or even safe to live downtown. Historic preservation has given us a sense of place and appeal. Without historic preservation managed by a professional, we'll be left with shoddy, subpar development. This position is essential and can only be replaced with a credentialed professional with a proven track record. To think this position can be eliminated or even easily replaced is disrespectful to those of us who have invested our hard-earned money on that vision. We cannot allow ineptness to destroy what so many citizens have sunk their life and earnings into. Think of the city as a corporation. The citizens are the shareholders. This is the kind of business misstep that would not be accepted at other places. Why should it be accepted here in Sanford? There was one person who consistently safeguarded historic preservation in this city, and she has been removed. Why? If I wanted to ultimately dismantle historic preservation in this city, or just let it die a slow death, the first strategic move I would make would be to remove the strong, decisive staff member at the helm. Then I would spread confusion and misinformation and ignore questions until people just forgot about it and the fuss died down. But nobody counted on the fact that while Ms. Dalton sparred with plenty of people who didn't care for the rules, almost everyone respects her work and knows how important it is to our city. We aren't going away. We were lucky to have one qualified staff member who could wear two hats, historic preservation officer and community planner. Most cities have two different people doing those positions because each is so specialized. There isn't usually one person qualified to do both. Under the community planner role, Ms. Dalton completed projects like Paw Park, the City Wayfinding Project, the Pathways to History Project, the Georgetown Neighborhood Plan, Moving in the Square, the expansion of the CRA boundary resulting in the Sanford Avenue Streetscape Project, which revived a blighted downtown corridor, cottage homes, and the official designation of the City of Sanford's cultural corridor to promote arts, heritage, and cultural diversity. The city will now have to replace both of those roles, or we, the citizens, will feel the loss of the benefit of all the things that Christine did. It will be extremely difficult to find someone who can do both. If not, there will certainly be a cut to the quality and service in our communities. Christine was a champion for all of Sanford's history, not just the two historic districts. Sanford has rich histories tucked away everywhere, including our historically disenfranchised neighborhoods. Christine was passionate about promoting Sanford's African American history and culture and put a lot of time into compiling and representing their histories to tell the whole story of Sanford. Who will do that now? Christine fought for the funding of civic projects and processing of grant requests. She collaborated with community groups, including Goldsboro, Georgetown, and most recently the residents of San Lanta. She attended conferences and paid for further education either out of her own pocket or by obtaining scholarships from organizations such as the Sanford Historic Trust. Where do we go from here? This board wants Christine Dalton back. If we can't have that, this role must be filled by a qualified person who can properly manage Sanford's historic assets and maximize the benefit of heritage tourism for Sanford. I would like to be part of an advisory board to participate in the selection process for her replacement. City Hall needs a culture change. It angers me that an accomplished, high-achieving, and valuable person be treated this way. It never failed to astonish me when I would see examples of Christine being badmouthed and cyberbullied on social media by ignorant people who don't have the courage to come out from behind their keyboards. I've had personal one-on-one experiences with certain staff members who've made undermining comments about Christine that cast her in a negative light. I've heard stories of applicants coming into the building department and bullying Christine verbally and even sometimes in a threatening physical manner. There's no scenario in which this is acceptable in the workplace. Ms. Dalton had a massive workload and needed help from a qualified assistant. This board was told on the record that she would have access to a planning technician for help, but once that person was indeed hired, we never saw hide nor hair of them. And things certainly didn't improve on this end. During our board discussion at last month's meeting, several problems were discussed. The building department not date stamping documents, items being added to applicants' file after the fact and without a signature from staff, and without the documents being sent to staff, missing staff comments from the system, and leadership directing Christine to sign off on clear violations to Schedule S that should have been code enforcement violations. So there's 3 things I want to leave this meeting with this evening. I want the assurances that the city will hire a qualified historic preservation officer and community planner. The confirmation of the opportunity to form an advisory board to select the replacement, and the full assurances that Schedule S will continue to be enforced as it has been in the past. Historic preservation officer. I have been a board member for the past 6 years and have seen many improvements in the coordination of building permits and code enforcement issues for homes in the historic district. My main concern is that we will not have the level of support we have had in the past from city staff in regards to the S codes, and that not enough emphasis is being placed on hiring a degreed, experienced, and qualified historic preservation officer. Since the Historic Preservation Board was not notified of staff changes and a plan going forward, I felt like there wasn't any thought to what happens next. I hope that this meeting will clarify some of these concerns and that the city staff, mayor, and commissioners will continue supporting the work of the Historic Preservation Board. Would the vice chairman like to speak?
Sure. And mine's going to be pretty short too. I'd like to reiterate everything that Amy just said. I think she had a well-reasoned statement, and rather than sit here and reiterate everything again, I'll just tell you a little personal story. My wife and I purchased a home in the historic district about 3 years ago, putting a lot of time and money, as many of you have, into that restoration. Why did we choose Sanford? Why not Winter Park, which is actually where my office is located? Well, the same reason again, many of you did that, and it's because of the historic character and the knowledge that there's historic preservation here. There's not in many small towns, and a lot of the historic character in small towns is wiped away by new development. I'm concerned about the events that led up to this meeting. Hope that the city administration, city council, and mayor do the right thing in protecting the historic preservation in the city of Sanford. Thank you.
Sure. Ditto to what they both said, but the main thing is I want to know what the different direction is. I hope it's not away from historic preservation. But Christine had a very difficult job, and whoever follows her is going to have a very difficult job trying to please a lot of different people. It's hard to sit on this board. It's very hard to do her job every day. The most important thing is the city is going to stand behind her or this person and not let them bully, not let the applicants bully her, not let anyone bully him or her to do the job properly, because everyone has invested a lot of money, and everybody who's here loves it here because of the historic character.
Thank you, Ms. Eldridge.
Yes, I want to begin my statement by thanking everyone who took the time today to be present, to show our city leaders the importance of historic preservation here in Sanford. We have people that have flown from Michigan, Miami, North Carolina, that took the time to show the support, and I think that sends a really strong message to our leadership. Christine came to this city 13 years ago this October, and like her or not, you have to admit that she's done a lot for our city. She was passionate and very qualified preservationist who saw the value of our historic districts and other neighborhoods as well here in Sanford. She was a dedicated employee who spent many weekends and many evenings working on city projects. I recall several times calling her while she was on vacation to ask her certain questions about my Historic Preservation Board packet, and she was working on things that she felt she needed her attention while she was on vacation. I would call her evenings to ask her about an application or an applicant and their request, and she never reminded me that she was off work. She always spent the time to explain the application, explain the S codes. Sometimes it'd be an hour and a half, 2-hour conversation on her off time. That's an example, ladies and gentlemen, of a dedicated employee to me. These are the things that her coworkers and her supervisors chose not to see. She worked hard for grants for our city, worked on many projects that she was not paid for, as Tammy mentioned, moving into Square, Pop Park, Art Committee, brochures for walking tours, heritage tourism, and that's just like a tip of the iceberg. These are the things I'm afraid you'll never see in your next contract employee. As most people, after hours, call it a day. Christine also represented our town very well. She made sure she went to the Florida Trust events, national trust events. She educated other preservationists around the country about Sanford, and she actually got them interested in our town. She hosted many of them to events like the Christmas Tour of Homes, Oktoberfest, just to show them all the things she was so proud of. She applied and won awards that she knew Sanford deserved, and she represented us in accepting those awards. Because the city could not fund her, she would either fund herself, like you said, or she was sponsored by the Sanford Historic Trust because they saw the value in her attending such events. I say all these things about Christine because she deserves this recognition for a job she did very well for 13 years. Years ago when she took her position, no one talked about Sanford. I remember when Mike and I purchased our home 15 years ago, I went up to our clients and say, you're moving where?
Yeah.
And why? Now, they sit in my chair and they say, just went to Sanford. The homes are beautiful, the downtown's vibrant, the buildings are gorgeous. This doesn't happen by coincidence. I feel that someone who worked and dedicated themselves 13 years, it's pretty shameful to hear how she was dismissed. And if I were a city employee sitting here today, I'd be a little nervous. Someone who has given so much to the city deserves a kinder departure, in my opinion. We're moving in a different direction is not an answer to the question, why am I being fired today? I know that every year she would ask for evaluations, which apparently are in her contract, and in the past 8 years has never been given one. I think that's shameful. Having said all of this, my biggest concern when I heard she was leaving was, what do you mean we're going in a different direction? Because here's how I interpret that. We're moving away from preservation. Preservation's importance to the citizens of Sanford, and I truly hope that you are really going to look for historic preservationists to take over Christine's job, and that this person is qualified and credentialed as she was. It's very clear to me from today's preparation of this packet that the person who prepared it is not qualified. It's not what we're used to. We're used to much more detail. We're used to being guided much better than what this was today. I hope that you remember and listen to the wishes of your citizens that chose for you to represent. And one last thing I want to say, and I've debated whether saying it or not, but it's kind of been bothering me, is shame on the employee that started the rumor that Christine sat in Mr. Bonaparte's office for an hour and a half in a rant and hysterically crying. This is not true. I spoke with her as she was driving off, and she didn't shed a tear. There are great things that are going to happen in that girl's future. And I told her this is the best thing that ever happened to her. So, for that person spreading the rumors, I think you need to stop. Because that's not a good thing in your department, Mr. Russ. And you need to find out who that bad apple is. That's all I have to say.
All right, so anyone from the public that wanted to speak has probably already filled out the forms. May I have one, please?
Madam Chairman, would it be okay, there are a few people that did come from out of town, some that have to take planes, I think.
I've got my out-of-towners
Okay.
up first. The first speaker this evening will be Mr. Richard Heisenbottle out of Coral Gables.
Madam Chairman. Thank you, everybody in the room, and thank you for those commissioners that are here to listen as well. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rich Heisenbottle, F-A-I-A, and I am an architect and a developer. I'm the managing member of Sanford Waterfront Partners, LLC, the development team that is working to develop the Catalyst site into an award-winning, mixed-use, new urbanist style development. A historically compatible community within your downtown historic district. A development that I think, that I know, you will all be proud of. A development that we have also volunteered to have reviewed under the S codes for its compatibility with the downtown historic district. Ladies and gentlemen, I would not be here today if it were not for your historic preservation officer, Christine Dalton. And I am, like most of you in this room, extremely disappointed to hear that she has been so summarily terminated. But let us put that aside for a moment. It was not very long ago that I sat in the same position that all of you are sitting in on this dais today. I served for 10 years on the City of Miami's Historic Preservation Board, and 2 years, including 1 year as chairman, that's a tough job, Tammy, of the City of Coral Gables Historic Preservation Board, and today my business partner, Vinnie Torre, chairs that same board. During that time, I must say that I have seen many historic preservation officers come and go. At least 6 in the City of Miami. It's a challenging job. It's a politically sensitive job. Yet, it's one of the most important jobs, along with that of your planning director in any city in the country. Why is it so challenging and so sensitive? It is so because of a myriad of community interests that do not always understand the importance of maintaining the integrity of our community's historic legacy and have no idea how to apply or interpret the Secretary of the Interior standards and guidelines that make up historic preservation law. Because very often, if you're doing your job correctly, you have to say no. And developers don't like hearing the word no. I can speak for myself. And homeowners don't like hearing the word no either. And I don't like hearing that UPS on the floor over there. Does anybody else like that? Let's add a little levity to this. But sometimes saying no as a historic preservation officer and an HP board member is important to the long-term quality of life in our cities and to the economic development of our cities as well. Cities like Miami Beach, Charleston, South Carolina, and even my hometown of Coral Gables have ridden a wave of economic prosperity on the back of historic preservation. I have to tell you, I remember times when Miami Beach was nothing more than an old age home. God's waiting room, as it was aptly nicknamed. When I first arrived in Miami, a girlfriend of mine said to me, Russ, take me for a ride up Collins Avenue. I want to see what it's like on the beach. What a bore. She was asleep in less than 10 minutes. 100 blocks later, I got to the other end. Today, each one of these cities is the center of success and a great livable place that people are proud to visit, as people are becoming more proud to visit Sanford. Sanford has started moving in this same direction, and it should continue. So what would you look for if you were the city manager of Sanford, trying to fill the position of Historic Preservation Officer? What kind of person? What kind of credentials would you seek? Well, first I would tell you, you'd look towards education. Someone with a master's degree in historic preservation at minimum. You might look for someone with a bachelor's degree in environmental and growth management. Maybe a minor in business administration. Maybe a degree in architectural design and construction technology. Christine had all those qualifications. Maybe that candidate should be someone recognized and respected in the industry. Perhaps someone who has served on the board of the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. Someone who has served on the board of the American Planning Association Orlando chapter. Someone with an academic background, perhaps. Someone who's an adjunct professor of planning and historic preservation at Rollins College and at Seminole State College. Christine has those qualifications, Mr. Bonaparte. You would want someone with a proven track record of accomplishment. Someone passionate about the work they do. Someone who has won some awards for the work they do. Now, Tammy went ahead and stole my fire. She listed out every one of those awards that Christine won from the American Planning Association in 2018, for the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation in 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014, so I'm not going to repeat them any more than I already have. You would want the ideal candidate to show some scholarship. Someone who continues to educate themselves and their understanding of the community. It personally made me very proud for Christine to have shown that scholarship by attending things such as the Smithsonian Museum of African American Histories and Culture, the National Trust for Historic Preservation Leadership Program in 2017. I remember her calling me, telling me how excited she was about the program and what she had learned about community. I remember her telling me about the National Trust for Historic Preservation Education Conference in 2006. You would want your ideal candidate to be someone with a proven track record of success. Christine had that proven track record of success. The Citywide Wayfinding Program, the Sanford Avenue Streetscape Program, the Sanford Avenue Heritage Markers, the Pathways to History, all state award-winning projects that everyone in this community can be proud of, and frankly, I'm proud of. The Cottage Homes, the Sanford Historic Preservation Lecture Series, which I am really proud of. The movie In the Square, with problems setting it up every time. She continued to keep pushing it and making it happen. And Paul Park. I think she must have shown that to me 4 times. I'll go back again. Yes, someone with a resume like that would be the ideal candidate for Historic Preservation Officer. Someone committed, someone passionate about what they do. Now I ask you, was Christine Dalton committed and passionate about what she did? Yes. You bet she was. And this list only touches the surface of the many accomplishments, all of which go well beyond the job description of Historic Preservation Officer. Seems to me, Norton, that you had the ideal candidate for Historic Preservation Officer for the city of Sanford for the last 13 years. You had the best. And you fired her for no justifiable reason. Now, I am told that you want to go in a new direction. Perhaps the city wants to be more developer-friendly. Perhaps the city may want to tear down a building that, God knows, Christine wants to save and would prefer to designate. do you really think that you are ever going to find a better educated or more committed candidate for a historic preservation officer in this city? As a good friend of mine put it, Victor Dover, the internationally known master planner and the fellow that master planned Heritage Park with us, he said Christine was a real star find for any city that cares about its heritage, its livability, and its image, its brand, and its economic value. People like Christine Dalton know how to build a good community. They make the world and the cities we live in a better place. Are you sure you want to go in a different direction? Commissioners, Norton, with the success that you have had in the city of Sanford already, does this make any sense? This new direction is not what great cities do. Commissioners and Mr. Mayor, let me suggest that you make one thing very clear to the manager and to the city attorney. That policy is made by the city commission and the mayor. And policy should not be set by the city manager or the city attorney. Thank you all very much.
Our next speaker is Mr. Stephen Wright.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your statements and setting the tone and the atmosphere for this disaster. As a matter of introduction, in excerpted words of my favorite poet, Emily Elizabeth Dickinson of Amherst, Massachusetts, she states, "I am nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Don't tell. They will laugh, you know." In another version, she says, "Don't tell. They'll banish you, you know." She continues, "How dreary to be somebody, how public like a frog, to tell your name the livelong day to an admiring bog." Embracing these admonishments, I speak as a Sanford native. I was born and grew up in Goldsboro, attended Crooms High School, and worked after school on the corner of First Street and Sanford Avenue as a custodian and service attendant for Strickland Morrison Ford Company, at the time housed in one of Sanford's oldest and busier buildings, once known as the Michelanda Arcade during the 1920s. The type of building Christine Dalton was trained to fight, to save, and to preserve. Reminds you of the Civic Center. Today, 2 months shy of my 72nd birthday, and having lived my entire life in Sanford, I know a little about the culture enclaves, announced and unannounced, operative in the city of Sanford. During her tenure, Christine Dalton showcased not only a progressive face for Sanford in surrounding communities that have begun to revise their unfounded judgment of Sanford as a civilization, but also within appropriate professional entities across the nation. When I first met Christine Dalton, I thought I would meet with the working committees and walk away. However, it was difficult to believe that she, given her exceptional intellect strong ethics, and extensive background was even in Sanford. After speaking and working with Ms. Dalton, it became clear, very clear, that it was her passion and vision to seek, to uplift, to preserve that guided her. Christine Dalton exhibited the level of professionalism, knowledge, passion, and commitment that immediately garnered my trust and appreciation. Given my reluctance to become public fodder, Christine Dalton became for me a bridge over years of historical mistrust and deeply seated divides, cultural and otherwise. Therefore, I proudly participated with her and other community citizens on several city projects and gave her the green light, call me anytime about anything. When I read of her dismissal, I grew sad for Sanford's loss, and even more disappointed in the city's now questionable concept, notion, assessment, and pronouncement of priority. And a great loss it figures to become. To those in charge, known and unknown, hiding and standing publicly, respectfully, I trust this is not the beginning nor furtherance of Sanford's loss of the strides it has made in attempting to transform this historic city into the progressive culture destination Sanford deserves to become.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wright. Our next speaker this evening is George Cooper from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hello, I'm George Cooper from Charlotte, North Carolina. My speech is nowhere near as well prepared as everybody else's. My sentiments match exactly. My history with Christine happens to be because my grandfather was Elton Moten, who was the architect of many of the buildings in Sanford. I never knew him. He died before I was born. And I knew a little bit of what he had done around Sanford growing up. I loved coming here as a child. Every year we were here visiting my grandmother's yard. And after my mom died, I was going through her papers and found a bunch of artifacts and mementos that my grandfather had. And I said, you know, it'd be really neat if I could find somebody in Sanford who could see these and appreciate them for what they are. And I put them aside. Not long after that, my cousin from Milwaukee, on the other side of the family, called and said, there are these two people from Sanford, Florida, calling, wanting to know about Moten, your other grandfather. So I'm not sure what their motive is, but here's their number. Well, those two people turned out to be Robert Kenny and Christine Dalton. And that was just an amazing, meeting Christine and Robert has been an amazing part of my life. Christine came up, she found these letters that my grandfather had written when he had to work away from Sanford. It described his family, his work, and living conditions in places like Chicago during Al Capone's era. Fascinating letters. Christine has taken this under her belt. She's in the process of researching it, organizing it, and presenting it so that this part of the history of Sanford can be made public and everybody can understand what's going on. Her professionalism, her attention to detail, her passion, her enthusiasm, her abilities are unquestioned. I was very happy to hear everybody else has the same opinion I did. I wasn't sure if I was right. Christine is an amazing woman, and I'm proud to have known her, or to still know her. one of the things she's done in Sanford is she did the Vanish to Sanford program a few months ago, where she brought up pictures of old buildings. She did it in, I forget that, I know it is Bram Towers, but it's and she brought down people who had grown up in Sanford. She showed a picture, like say, of the band shell. She had a gentleman there from the University of Central Florida with a reporter, and she would say, "Who remembers about this bandstand?" And after a while, people would start talking, and she uncovered more history and legacy and stories in that 2 hours than I would have thought possible. It was an amazing meeting. So Sanford has a treasure in Christine, and that they should realize it. The one other little aside I have is I lived in Jacksonville for 18 years in the historic district, Riverside Avondale. They've gone through a very similar thing as Sanford. In the 60s and 70s, they were almost turned into an interstate. There were some champions there who came forward and kept driving and kept pushing and saw the vision of what they could be. And Riverside Avondale has now turned into a special place. And it's all because of historic preservation, it's the community, but it takes a leader. It takes someone like Christine, or in the case of Jacksonville, a gentleman named Wayne Woods, who kept driving, kept making sure everybody saw the big picture and made it happen. And they bring other people in, and there's a community momentum that happens. It turns a place that could have been nothing into someplace great. I saw Christine was doing that for Sanford. I am sad that that's no longer true. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Ms. Maria Shreve.
Hello, Chairman and the board, and I'd like to thank everyone who's come out today. Just listening to people speak, it's just been amazing, and I think this community is hearing things for the first time. I worked with Christine many times on HPV and as chairman of the CRA, and I didn't know some of the things that Christine had done. So thank you for sharing your experiences with her. Really great. As an 18-year resident and real estate professional that has been selling in the area for over 16 years, I'm here today to remind our city leadership of the importance of historic preservation and the significance that historic districts has had on the city since its inception in the late 80s. As the city attorney Bill Colbert stated in my Citizens Academy in his opening statements, he said, the declaration of the historic district was one of the 5 significant events that was a catalyst for the economic recovery of the city and created the city we have today. It appears, from my perspective, the city manager has recklessly made a decision that directly affects the one thing the city has going for it, historic preservation. The one thing that attracts people to live here, to open businesses here, to invest here. Throughout the years selling real estate in Central Florida, I have yet to hear someone say to me, I'm moving to Sanford for the schools, or I'm moving to Sanford because there's low crime rate. No, they show up and they say, I want a historic home. I want to live in a community full of like-minded people who respect and honor the history that we have here. We have a walkable community that has attracted an eclectic group of people. Those people appreciate the charm of the historic neighborhoods, and they reap the benefits of increased property values due to the historic designation. From where I sit, the city doesn't have a clear plan in place for moving forward with historic preservation and protecting our one thing, Last week, we were told that city staff would be filling the vacated HBO duties. The next day, we heard they were finding a replacement. So what is it? And that's what we need to know. Has the job been posted? What are the qualifications? And I think you should contact Rich to get a list of those qualifications. When do you plan on filling the position? What is the time frame? And in the meantime, will there be a moratorium on decisions made regarding the historic preservation codes, since this meeting today proved you are not prepared for applicants at this time. It was unfair to the applicant, and it was unfair to the board. And I have some questions for Lonnie later regarding some statements he made, saying that if the staff says it's approved, that this board has to approve it. As a former member of the Historic Preservation Board, that was never the case. We were allowed to ask questions, and we were allowed to ask for qualifications. So, what you, Norton, fail to understand is that the HPO is not a part-time job. It is a highly visible position that requires a lot of interaction with the public. Just yesterday, I was showing a property, and the potential buyer, not a resident of Sanford, continued to mention that he was aware that he had to check with Christine Dalton to find out what he needed to do to the exterior of his building. At that time, what was I to say? Oh, by the way, they fired her, and they don't have a plan in place. No, instead I sat silent, thinking, don't know what to tell him. So your short-sighted decision to eliminate a position without a plan in place has an impact to this whole community, as you see, and a direct impact to me as a business professional, because I don't know who to send them to. I can't name another person at the city that I would be comfortable sending someone to if they have questions regarding preservation. No current staff member of the city has demonstrated to me to have the knowledge nor the desire to learn the S codes. We, the residents, are paying attention, Norton. We have a vested interest in our community. We are demanding our leadership work in the best interest of the whole, not the few. I'm requesting that the city manager present a formalized plan for the new direction and how City Hall plans to implement those plans. What you need to understand is this place matters, and you need to make decisions that support that mantra.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to tell a quick story. About 2.5 years ago, we lived on the east side of Orlando, and we sold our house. We're trying to figure out where we wanted to live. And my sister-in-law and brother-in-law said, "You got to do Sanford, Sanford, Sanford." So we did a drive-through. We're looking around, and we kind of had a kind of an off feeling. And but we sat down, and Christine basically said, "Let's just sit and talk." She did after work, and we spoke for an hour and a half, and I knew I was kind of interfering with her private life. And she just says, ask any question. It really didn't make a difference to her how long we talked. And in the 2.5 years, my wife and I, we purchased 4 houses, 3 lots, and 2 commercial buildings. All because of her. Because I knew she had to drive, and we had common thoughts of how we wanted to pursue. And now this different direction, as myself and many others, we're just asking what direction is, because at this point, I have paused on me moving forward on doing any other investments. I think there's more people that are saying the same thing. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. Thank you. I just want to add one thing. I've known Christine for now 2 years, 2.5 years. And during that time, she never mentioned all of her accomplishments. And it just shows that she did it for the community, not for her. It's not about her, it was about the community. I think we should recognize that. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker is Mrs. Julia Wright Brunson.
Thank you. I bring my posse with me. All members of Historic St. James AME Church, please come and stand with me. Miss Ollie, my sisters back there, and Miss Erna Walker. This congregation is older than the city of Sanford by 10 years. It's all documented. We know all of the things that you've said here this afternoon about Christine are absolutely true. But what we're going to tell you about here, and I hate to say this, but I see it coming. Back about 1952, 3 or so, Disney was looking for a place to land. They came to Sanford, they went to Ocala, and they went to Kissimmee. They came here, and the farmers said, no, we're not going to allow it here because we need people to work on the farm. You're shaking your head, I think you know that. See, I was born here too, just like Steve. This building that we are trying to save would never have happened. It wouldn't have begun. I know nothing about preservation. 3.5 years ago, this light bulb went off in my head and said, you got to do something about this building. My parents, their friends, most of us grew up in that church. We know what it should be. I learned how to write a grant. Never did that before. I learned what the preservation mission is and was. I get a preservation forum every day in my email, all because of Christine Dalton. I don't have to tell you about how available she is to folks. Just send her a text. You'll get an answer back in about 10 minutes. And you will have the answer to your question. Everybody in this room knows I'm not making this up. I do have a concern, we all do. Where are we going if we lose preservation? We lost Disney, can't go back and get that. But with this preservation track that we're on, we could very easily be another Savannah, another Birmingham. Look what Birmingham is doing with their museums. We could do the same thing here in Sanford. But you've got to have somebody that knows what they're doing, that can give some direction, and we know that the person, when they give direction, we know that it's going to work out. No, I didn't get my big grant, but guess what? I'm still writing, and all of the contacts that I made because of Christine, we're still talking how we're going to get a roof on that 120-year-old building. How are we going to do it? That roof is going to be $101,000. How many churches you know got $101,000 in their coffers? We're lucky we have 101 people in the audience on Sunday. So we've got work to do. I want this church to be saved. I think all of you do. You know what you've got there. That building, 1913 it was built. 1913, the original furniture is there. Stained glass windows. I don't know who fired who, but I think you need to back up and think about it.
Thank you so much. St. James Amy. Our next speaker is Mrs. Margie Chesmere.
So I too want to express a thank you to all the people that came out this afternoon, and a big thank you to the volunteer board and chair of the HPB board. I want to take you on a quick little journey. Imagine being a 13-year professional for the city of Sanford. And imagine returning back from vacation, your first day back, and attending a meeting, taking your pad and pencil to see what your next project might be. And imagine losing your job unexpectedly. And imagine when asked, why am I losing my job? The only reason given was that we're going in a different direction. When asked again, the same reason was given. When asked again, the same reason was given. Imagine not being sincerely thanked in that meeting for the 13 years of service that you gave to the city and the citizens of Sanford. That breaks my heart. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. So my purpose here today is to sincerely thank Christine Dalton for her service to the citizens of Sanford for the extraordinary 13 years. Thank you, Christine, for your educational expertise and for sharing it with us. For Vanish Sanford, for the Sanford Historic Preservation Lecture Series that featured distinguished speakers from all over the country, not just local speakers. Thank you for Pathways to History Project, 8 beautiful themed brochures that guide people through our historic neighborhoods and downtown. And these are accessible by the city website and in printed brochures. Thank you, Christine, for being a champion promoting arts, heritage, and cultural diversity. Thank you, Christine, for showcasing Historic Preservation Month year after year and helping the Trust raise our game in that area. Thank you, Christine, for projects that had citywide and huge economic impact. Thank you for applying for Sanford to be recognized as a Preserve America city and the $15,000 grant that came with that. Thank you for facilitating a public-private partnership with Amtrak so that we could have a citywide wayfinding program, which resulted in $150,000 savings to the city. Thank you for initiating comprehensive rezoning, almost 100 acres of Georgetown neighborhood to encourage owner-occupied investment. Thank you, Christine, for championing the expansion of the CRA district, resulting in a $2.5 million streetscape to revive a blighted neighborhood and downtown corridor. Thank you for your efforts with Sanford Grammar School to get it on the endangered list, and also for facilitating the University of Florida and Seminole County Public Schools to create the UCF Public History Center at the Grammar School. Thank you for volunteering for the community, for Hopper Academy, for Sanford Historic Trust, and others. Thank you for Georgetown Neighborhood Plan of Sanford Avenue Heritage Markers, the Paul Park Pilot Program, Nubian Square, and as you heard Mr. Heiselbaum talk about the Heritage Park Catalyst Site, which will have an economic impact on Sanford for years to come. Thank you for 13 years of service to a city we both love. Thank you for your passion and your pursuit of excellence, because good enough for you was never good enough. You've left an incredible legacy in Sanford. I will miss you, we will miss you. Thank you, Christine Dalton.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mr. Ian Lockwood.
feel like I'm at a funeral, not at a staff change. Christine loved Sanford, and I think it was contagious, her affection for the city. I'm formerly with Gladding Jackson, and my involvement with Sanford goes back 16 or 17 years when we reconstructed First Street and the waterfront with the swings and all that. And at the time, Sanford wasn't nearly like it is today. And so I've kept track of what's happened here, and I keep coming back and checking it out. And I couldn't help but be Christine. It just happens. I guess everyone's felt that way. And she took the time to talk with me and tell me what was going on, and I was actually incredibly impressed. Now, since we redid those two streets, I've helped cities do their main streets and waterfronts all over the country, and got what's called a Loeb Fellowship from Harvard University. And as a Loeb Fellow, there's 450 of us in the world, and 9 get created every year, and 9 die every year, more or less. One of our duties is to look for future Loeb Fellows. And Christine, in my 31 years, she's one of the 3 people who I will recommend to Harvard to become a Loeb Fellow. And now the duty of the Loeb Fellow is to advance the built natural environment. And she's done wonders to do that. And if she accepts it, she will be able to go to Harvard for 9 months. They will actually pay her to go, put her up in their house on campus. And every door at Harvard and MIT will be open to her. She can take any class, meet any professor, and go to cities and see what they're doing, so she can go to the next level. And this kind of fellowship is designed for people like Christine with this incredible potential to make a difference. And the reason I know that is because she's done it already, right here. And I think what's happened will be a big loss to the city and the community. And nobody can really predict the future, but history will judge this decision, ironically. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Buckley. Our next speaker is Mr. Henry Dorval.
Sorry. Hello, everybody. How you doing, Sanford? Hello, hello. Hi, my name is Henry Dorval. As most of you guys know, Help Henry, you know. So I moved to Sanford about 4 to 5 years ago. You know, I decided to be an adult, and I moved out and came to Sanford. So a lot of my experiences came from Sanford, whether it's business, meeting new people, networking. I grew a lot in Sanford. Everybody know, I don't know everybody, but I recently went to Haiti. I recently spent the last year in Haiti, and I was stuck in Haiti, so I couldn't return back to America. It was a big immigration thing, you know. It was very traumatizing, you know. But luckily, I know some good people in the city of Sanford, and I was able to reach out to one of my good friends, not Christine Dalton, but Christine Hollerback, and I was able to tell her how, you know, I'm stuck in Haiti, I need some help, can you guys maybe, you know, talk to immigration and let them know that I need to get back home. And then that's when she reached out to another good friend of mine, Mr. Dan Ping, one of our celebrities. He started the Help Henry campaign with his the Boat Key, which everybody's familiar with. So with that campaign, we was able to get 100 letters written to get sent to immigration from the community of Sanford. And I couldn't even call 100 people right now and tell them, come hang out with me. So that was amazing. And, you know, so we sent all that. So thank you, everybody that wrote letters and was able to take the time out to do that. But, so, you know, we did all that. We sent letters. Another friend of mine, his name is Jeff Sonson. That's when you guys seen all the beautiful murals around town. He was able to make all the murals, and, you know, we was just building a lot of buzz. You know, it was just getting the attention that we was trying to make it get, but it still wasn't swaying immigration how I would like it. So, you know, because we sent everything, we sent the letters, we showed them videos, we said this is what's happening, you know, they need me back in the city, but it just wasn't happening. And then I said, you know what, I told them, I said, you know what, I need this process expedited, please guys, I need to get back to my mother, which she's disabled. I'm the one who takes care of her primary, you know, I take care of her. So I let them know how she was disabled, how she even became depressed because I was in Haiti. She started having to take medications and all this stuff. So we had to submit all that information to immigration. I let them know how you know, the water in Haiti wasn't doing me well. I was getting rashes and all the other details that happened. I let them know everything, and still could not get this thing expedited. So I was still kind of, so even all that push, it still just wasn't enough. And then that's when Jeff Sonson kept mentioning Christine Dalton, and it's like, she knows everybody, and she knows everybody, she can get us in the right direction. And I didn't really know who Christine Dalton was. I just met her one time. It was here in City Hall. It was something we were doing about art. It was some art meeting. I don't remember what it was, but that's when I just kind of knew about Christine. But he was like, oh, you know, Christine Dalton can help. This is it. You know, I was like, I don't know. You know what? Let me just reach out to her. You know, we did everything else. What more can we do? You know. So that's when, you know, I reached out to Christine Dalton, and you know, and we was trying to see how can she help with the case. And she instantly got on board. Like, there was no question. It was instantly like finding out what can she do, who she needs to talk to, and what which connections she needs to pull, which everybody knows. She knows everybody. So so she was definitely doing what she had to do. She reached out to Jason Broder. I don't know if he's still in Sanford, but yeah, I forgot what his position was. But yeah,
State representative.
Yes, state representative. I knew that, Jason. But yeah, so so she reached out to him, and then was able to get in contact with Marco Rubio's office. So I was like, okay, this is a different step, you know, and you know, so my case was able to, because of Christine Dalton, my case was able to get to Senator Marco Rubio's office, get on their desk, and then for them to say this is priority and put this on the top of their stack and take it as priority. And it was only until that, I was like a week later. It was like literally their office called immigration. A week later, they expedited the case. So I just want to say thank you, Christine Dalton. Thank you for everything you've done for the city. Thank you for everybody you met and you've helped them and inspired their lives. And like everybody else said, you know, you don't want people working for the city that is just a job. You want people a little more personal. Even since I've been back from Haiti, it's not like I don't know Christine. She's invited me multiple times to come out and eat, have lunch, and invited me out to come hang out on her boat, go out on the boat, you know, so it's not, so she's more personable. She's not somebody who just has a position and she just walks around thinking she's the you know, just the big talk, you know. So she actually cares about the people in the city, in the community, you know. And yeah, people might be upset because they get no's, like somebody else says, but no's means the job is getting done right sometimes. So I just want to say that, and I want to speak my mind. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Senator.
Our next speaker, I apologize in advance. I'm not able to quite read the last name. It's Chris Sorensen. Spreisen. Okay. I apologize for that.
No worries.
Are you a doctor?
No, I'm a lawyer.
Okay.
I don't look like one today, but. My name is Chris Sprezinski. I've lived on Palmetto Avenue for a year and a half. I'm a Seminole County native. I grew up in Seminole and went to Seminole County grade schools. I am fiercely passionate about our community. I'm a lawyer. I employ 3 employees, and my law firm is located in Seminole County. I'm president of the Seminole County Bar Association and the Seminole County Bar Association Legal Aid Society. When I had the opportunity to buy my first home in Seminole County, I knew I wanted a historic home in a place with a community, and quite frankly, I've actually never met Christine Dalton in person at all. But I know Christine very deeply. My street is composed of neighbors who purchased their home for the same reasons that I did, a love of history, a deep love of history. And I actually know my neighbor's name in this community. It's a wonderful community. And we did that because of the passion for historic homes. So we're very passionate about that. What I'm very interested in just speaking briefly about is making sure that we have the same accountability for small business owners, for people who are successful in Seminole County, and keeping that going in Seminole County and in Sanford specifically, because this is where I've built my home and ultimately would love to build my business. As a lawyer, I get deeply rooted in procedure sometimes, and when you look at the S codes and you look at the things which govern, this board has a tremendous responsibility for our community. And looking at that, you guys have the word jurisdiction over making the decisions as to these homes. And pursuant to that code, if the board determines that a certificate of appropriateness will not be issued, it shall written findings stating that the residence for such determination and shall forthwith notify the applicants of such determination by furnishing him or her with an arrested copy of his findings. That's with the board. The city provides that, but our S codes establish that in you guys. And so you need dependable, accountable folks from the city to provide you with the information to make those important determinations. And I've talked to dozens and dozens of people in our community, and I know that my home wouldn't be the home that it is without Christine Dalton. So I would just ask that we hear from the city as to how that's going to work, because you guys need the information that's vital to you to make the decisions that are important to the community. Thanks.
Thank you. We have a few more speakers. I just want to go ahead and remind everyone that if you are interested in speaking or you've been moved to speak since you've been in the audience listening, please do fill out one of these papers and it will make its way to me. Our next speaker is Mr. Dalton Chen.
Madam Chairwoman and fellow board members, I greet you today as one of your former colleagues. As you all know, my name is Dalton Chen. I live at 1214 South Myrtle Avenue, and I'm a former board member of the Sanford Historic Trust. I'm a former member of the Historic Preservation Board, and for a time I was the chairman of the Historic Preservation Board. And during my tenure on HPB, I had the privilege and the honor of working with Christine Dalton in updating the S codes. A lot of people look at the S codes and start talking about how, oh, why do we have to do this? Why these codes were written at a time that don't really reflect what the needs of our community are. And we took our time when we our tenure on HPB, when we fashioned the S codes and updated them to work better with our communities, whether it be residents, whether it be business owners. And in that process, and in helping us fashion those amendments or those updates, at every step of the way, Christine Dalton was educating us, providing us with resources, helping us to fashion what the S codes are today. The power that the HPB has is to advocate for preservation in this community. Preservation that you've heard time and time again from speakers tonight that has made this community what it is today. We are known as historic Sanford. We're not like other communities. And what makes us special is having a standard which sometimes homeowners or business owners are told no. I've been told no before. I live in this community. I've been an applicant. I've been on both sides of that fence. And preservation is what makes us who we are. As a quasi-judicial advisory board, as I remember, this board has the responsibility to advocate for preservation. I was reviewing the S codes a little while ago to find out a little bit more, and one of the things that helps is a staff recommendation, because what the HPB is charged with under section 3.0, subsection E4, paragraph 4, is that if the board determines the proposal is appropriate, they shall approve that application. Staff recommendations are just that. They're recommendations. And in those recommendations, you have to be provided with information. And again, that helps you as the board to assist in making your decision. As a former HPB member and former chairman, what I heard tonight was appalling. It did not give you anything, in my opinion, to guide and help you make a decision. And I just wanted to say that without Christine Dalton, I wouldn't have come to this community. 13 years ago, my wife and I bought a home here. 13 years ago is when Christine started working here. We take for granted, I think, how good a historic preservation officer we've had here in the city of Sanford. You've heard time and time again tonight how passionate she was. You've heard time and time again how she has helped this city become what it is today. And again, not everyone will agree with decisions. That's the nature of life. But we all have the common goal of making our city great. So with that said, I'm looking forward to hearing what the city's response is, as well as everyone else, as to what this new direction is. Because over the last 13 years, I think the decision, or the direction that the city has gone in, has been pretty darn great. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Pasha Baker.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, and to the Historic Preservation Board, and my neighbors here in the city of Sanford. My name is Pasha Baker. I am the Director and CEO of the Goldsboro Westside Community Historical Association, Incorporated, encompassing 3 museums here in Sanford, 2 gardens, an art square, and privileged to purchase Page Jackson Cemetery, and one of the only very few people in this country to do it from the state of Florida. My role in historic preservation, of course as a historian and being 3 generations here, I do know the history, the legacy of the buildings. But as a vested business owner, I want to bring attention to what Ms. Dalton has done in all communities here in the city of Sanford, not just in downtown, but she did this all over the city. You just heard the eloquent speaker, Ms. Julia Brunson, in Georgetown, in St. James A&E. I'm telling you what she's done for us there in Goldsboro to operate those 6 entities and to have spoken at the Smithsonian Museum. And she has helped me greatly. My background, like Ms. Brunson, is not in historic preservation. I'm a former business person, own business, an entrepreneur. That's my background. So she had to help us get established on how to coordinate the different businesses and artifacts, how to care for those preservation of those items, since that we've had over 100+ years. Helped her on those walking tours and those brochures. I want to be clear about the direction this city is going in, because as a vested business owner, as a vested historian, and as a vested person that has been here for this many years and generations, I'm of great concern. But I definitely want to highlight everything that has been said today about Ms. Dalton. She was a wonderful person. She still is a wonderful person. I've known her since 2010, since we started those museums and grew it in today. I'm very proud of her and the things that she will accomplish to do. And I want to make sure I hope she is watching, and we send her our love and regards and keep her in our prayers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Mr. Thomas, is this Blackman?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, my mother died, so I'm a little. She died on Christmas Eve, but it was Christine Dalton I bought here in 2003. Because of my mom, I paid my mortgage off, and I've restored my house at 919 South Elm Avenue, and it breaks my heart. Excuse me. I've known this woman since I moved here. And to be treated the way she was treated is a travesty. I'm sorry, I'm not too eloquent. I didn't have anything prepared to say, but she was the best thing about this city. My house is 100 years old this year. I'm a victim of Hurricane Irma. I'm finally getting my roof replaced. I've been before this board, and I've received yeses and I've received no's, but I respect everything y'all do here. And I want an explanation. We all need an explanation. What the hell is going on here? Because that woman has done. She is the most passionate person. When I was looking for a house, I had a job in Deltona. It's just over the bridge. I never thought of moving here, but I met her, and I looked around, and I bought. And that woman was a great human being. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you very much, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Stephen Chesmere.
I've lived in the city of Sanford for 20 years. I've worked with Christine Dalton on numerous projects over the past 13 years. On personal projects for my residents, but also in my roles as an HPB member and past chairperson, and as a Sanford Historic Trust member and past president. People may focus on the title of Historic Preservation Officer, but the work she did was for all of Sanford. Many of you may not know that Christine held 2 job titles for the city of Sanford. She was the city's Historic Preservation Officer and a community planner. So when the city looks to fill her shoes, it may be a daunting task. My understanding is that the city is going in a new direction, and I have some specific questions about that. Will the new direction include someone with a degree and expertise in historic preservation? Will the new direction include someone who initiates new projects that bring positive press coverage to the city? Projects like the Georgetown Neighborhood Plan, Port Park Pilot Program, and so many others. Will the new direction include someone who has demonstrated success in grant writing and grant management? Will the new direction include someone who has the network and respect of the historic preservation professionals throughout the state? Will the new direction include someone with professional connections that will lead to projects like the Heritage Park Waterfront Development Project that will drive economic development in Sanford for years to come? And finally, will the new direction include someone with the level of expertise and passion for Sanford that Christine demonstrated for the last 13 years? I would also urge the city to include members of HPB in the selection process, as these citizen volunteers have the direct knowledge of the magnitude and importance of our role in the Historic Preservation Officer and the future of our great city. In closing, I'd like to share a quote from Red Adair, not Fred Astaire, but Red Adair. Red is a famous oil well firefighter, and his quote is, "If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur." Thank you very much.
Our final speaker this evening is Mr. Leon Konieczny, and he is speaking on behalf of himself and as the president of the Sanford Historic Trust.
Leon Konieczny, 216 South Elm. Well, sure is nice to see all the people here, standing room only in the back. There's a few chairs up here in the front. It's not kind of like church, I guess no one wants to sit up in front. I come here as a mature citizen. So my first reference is going to be to something that happened back in 1985. So some of you, and many of you may say, I wasn't even born then. In 1985, an iconic American company decided to take a new direction. It was called New Coke. We all know how that turned out. I don't know for sure whatever happened to the person who came up with that new direction. If they had a drink at all, I don't know. But we're told that Sanford's undergoing a new direction. I learned a lot about Christine today. Yeah, I did feel a little bit like I was in a funeral for a little bit here. She did a lot of work, a lot for the city. People ask me, how long have you lived in Sanford? And it's hard for me to give them a direct answer. I've lived in Sanford about 8 years, but I've only slept here for about 14 months now. We used to live in Lake Mary. We chose Sanford to be our retirement home. We built a house here in the historic district, in part because of Sanford's historic nature, the community, not just the buildings, but the people, not just downtown, but the whole city itself. So Sanford's going up with a new direction, I guess. But what is that? You know, I come from the business world. I recently retired from the business world, and we always had a plan. I mean, I had a coworker murdered one Friday night. I got a call Saturday morning. What are we going to do? Had another coworker, young man, 2-year-old kids, dropped dead of a heart attack. What are you going to do? You know, we had a plan, though, as a company. You know, as sad as those things may be, we had a plan. So I wonder, what is Sanford's plan? We have an old adage, PP, PPP, the 5 Ps, sometimes the 7 Ps. Prior planning prevents poor performance. What is the plan, I guess? I appreciate the response from some people to some of my the letter I sent on behalf of the Sanford Historic Trust. I received a response, which I posted on our website from Commissioner Woodruff about the city's Open for Business initiative. I hope that means that maybe I'll see a full parking lot on Friday sometimes. I hope that maybe that departments will be open when we the people want to be there. You know, Sanford, we the people elect our mayor, our commissioners, they appoint a board, they hire the city, they appoint the city manager, run the city. But it's we the people. Open for business? I sure hope so. I sure hope we're open for business. You know, we could be Winter Park. Thankfully, we're not. We could be College Park. I have friends who live in College Park. The homes all around them are buying up these old homes, beautiful old homes, tearing them down, 2-3 lots at a time, building great, big, nice new structures, modern, glass, steel, all that stuff. I'm sure glad we're not in College Park. So, preservation in Sanford. What's our direction? So I really asked the mayor. Is the mayor here? Commissioner Woodruff. I know I saw him. I saw Commissioner Austin. I know I talked to Commissioner Williams earlier today. She may be here. I'm not sure if Commissioner Mahaney's here. But what is our direction? You know, the city leaders that we elect need to provide direction, clear direction. And I don't know if the leadership, if we failed, or if the city has failed to listen. 3 instances come to my mind. I'll just mention them briefly because the third, of course, that's why we're here today. First was the airport. About, 4 or 5 months ago, the city came to a work session for the commission with a plan to put a moratorium on development around the airport. Wow. Well, fortunately, when the city found out, when the mayor found out, and the city commissioners, they kind of put a stop to that. Second of all, but why didn't they know? Why would the city embark in that direction? Don't they understand what our city leadership wants? Second of all, just this last, I think it was the last, maybe the one before that, work session. I generally thank you, Dan, for posting them. I listened to the work sessions. Some of the commissioners were totally kind of blindsided by this some plan to sell the Chamber building, a historic structure, USO building from World War II. You know, Sanford has this beautiful lakefront that Orlando's lakefront is Lake Eola. They don't even have an alligator there. We have a beautiful lakefront. We have all this nice green space that the city owns, and all of a sudden there's some plan to, unbeknownst to our city commission, plan to maybe sell the chamber. You know, maybe we should get Heritage Park going first and see what that brings us, because that building, that chamber is going to become very valuable space. And then, of course, we have historic preservation. I guess, what is our new direction? I hope it's not New Coke. I hope it's a new direction. A lot of impressive people spoke before me. I'm really impressed, actually. I didn't know all these things about Christine. Again, I feel a little bit like we're writing a funeral, but I know that Christine's going to be all right. I mean, you heard Mr. Lockwood speaking. I remember him because she brought him to speak to the Historic Trust. Impressive. Christine has impressive credentials. Now the city needs to find someone with equally impressive credentials. It's also the city's chance to shine, to find someone to fill those shoes, or some ones to fill those shoes, and really take the city a step ahead, a step forward. You know, you can make something good out of this, but it's up to the city to do that. It's up to our city leadership to ensure that that happens. Thanks to all who came tonight. Thanks to all who spoke. I think if you still want to speak, you still can, right? Tammy will let you. But thanks everyone for coming. Thank you.
All right, we have one more speaker, and if anyone else wants to speak, please do not hesitate. Fill out the form. We'll get you up there. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, our next speaker is Karen Casey.
I'm a terrible public speaker, and I'm getting over my fear at this moment. Just to cast a little, slightly different perspective of someone who knew Christine. I'm someone that actually does restore homes. I live here. I've lived here for 11 years. My husband and I have owned 3 homes here in Sanford. We have all worked on them. I started working for Chris Stevens' business. If anybody remembers Chris Stevens, he built his business in Sanford, recreating historic windows. He built, years of his life were devoted to this. And I started working for him part-time. I worked for Jody Rubin when she took over the business. I worked among other Sanford residents when this was happening. This was my second job at the time. I was running a business in Sanford in the downtown district, and when that didn't work out, I decided to take on restoration full-time. I have been working since 2011, doing nothing but restoring historic homes around Orlando, in Sanford, in North Carolina, in Miami. I have been to all of these locations, and I take the passion that Christine has helped give me to each of these projects. I wouldn't be where I am if she wasn't here. I wouldn't be living in Sanford still if she wasn't here. I apologize. I wasn't wanting to get up here and be upset. But her passion is not just to Sanford. Her passion was contagious. And her passion is spread to everybody in this room, one way or another. And that's why we're here. So, to the city and to its staff, to its mayor, know that we are more impassioned than ever to keep preservation alive in Sanford. Know that I personally have taken on learning every S code, every update, and will continue to do so and make sure that I'm present as these changes go forward. And I will be watching. Thank you so much.
going to read into the record at this time. The first is from Matthew West. Dear Miss Anini, I just learned late last night that Christine Dalton was terminated by the City of Sanford. I am shocked and dismayed by this news. I don't think the city will find a more dedicated professional than Christine Dalton. She devoted herself tirelessly to the city and historic preservation. She spent countless hours going above and beyond in the service of the city. I am saddened and concerned by this news. I hope the Historic Preservation Board will look into this matter. The city and the HPB have lost an incredible asset. The city needs to maintain a focus on historic preservation. Sincerely, Matthew West, AICP, which stands for American Institute of Community Planners. The second statement is from Joseph Minicaci. He is also from Harvard. He's a Harvard graduate. Ms. Anini, I was stunned to hear that the City of Sanford has taken a new direction with its vision of government and leadership and has terminated their contract with Christine Dalton. As a chair of an advisory committee for the city, you are well aware of the talents of Ms. Dalton. I am writing to you to add my support of Ms. Dalton and the work she has done in your community. As one who has worked in government in a past career, and having worked with governments all over this country, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, I can attest that Ms. Dalton is a rare breed of talent often not found in government. I saw it in the buildings she cared for, the educational series she promoted, the streetscapes she partnered on and advocated for, businesses she assisted, and yes, preservation she led. Not to mention the coursework she teaches as a professor. She is not just a competent and professional preservation planner, she is also a skilled and talented community builder. The latter takes a passion and commitment beyond the job description. It is often thankless, or worse, undervalued. The proof is in the work that gets done and the value improvement in the community. It's the sense of place created, the investments and reinvestments, quality of life improvement to the residents, and the authenticity which makes a community proud. The more measurable effect is in the economic value that we see community after community create within their economic enhancement. The cold reality of the numbers is easy to measure, but that economic well-being is built on the effort, care, and love of community that all too few people give to their towns. It is a true commitment to civic well-being with a strong moral compass beyond the call of a professional role. Ms. Dalton is one of those people. To change direction from that course and cast away those talents, successes, and knowledge is deeply unfortunate. As a citizen advisory committee to your government, this should give you all pause that these talents and direction of moving toward an improved urban environment are not a valued part of the plan going forward. We look back to our history not to trap our cities in amber, but to learn lessons from our community leaders who have established our community value and bring those values forward. Sadly, this problem of ignoring our past has been a problem throughout Florida, and it has taken tireless advocacy of professionals like Ms. Dalton to demonstrate those models to today's reality, which is often uncomfortable or inconvenient, but terribly important. To ignore or discount that value and what Ms. Dalton has brought to your community is a great step backward for Sanford. I would have liked to have been there to say this publicly at your meeting today, but at the very least, have this read as part of the record. Additionally, your community and citizens of Sanford, including elected representatives, should really commit yourself to an agnostic and transparent evaluation of the events that would lead to such a dramatic change in course, where intellect, skill, entrepreneurial talent, and passion for place is casually cast aside. Ultimately, these are your community choices, and they do come with consequences. In our practice, we have seen the results of these moves, and they often leave a legacy of impact on the community. He's also with the American Institute of Community Planners and a Harvard graduate. Speaking of Harvard, the next speaker is an author whose work, his book is required reading for Harvard courses in historic preservation. It's Mr. Victor Dover. Ms. Anini, as you know, the good work you and your teammates do in historic preservation and community revitalization is sometimes thankless, but it's nonetheless crucial. It calls for professionals who have a deep commitment, knowledge, passionate personalities, and endurance. I have seen all these essential traits on display year after year in the hard work of Christine Dalton. Sanford has been lucky to have her employed there. She is unquestionably in the top tier of historic preservation professionals in our state and nationally, a real star find for any city that cares about its heritage, its livability, its unique brand, and its economic value. I'm happy to answer any questions about my experiences collaborating with her and learning from her. Victor Dover. And the final statement I'm reading tonight is on behalf of Mr. Wayne Denning. He's a resident at 101 East 10th Street. I bought a home in the historic district and moved here over 10 years ago. The only reason I bought in Sanford was that the homes were protected by the S codes and were designated as a historic district with the protections that come with that designation. Since moving here, I have invested in several other homes and an apartment building. I believe that property values are higher because we have the protections provided by the S codes and the vigilant enforcement by the Code Enforcement Department and the Building Department. If we lose the support of city officials in maintaining an active HPD and a qualified historic preservation officer to administer the code, then I feel the property values and the attractiveness of the historic district residential areas will decline. Once declining, new homeowners will not move here, and existing homeowners will look elsewhere. As for myself, if I see a decline in support for the HPD and the S codes, I would certainly consider looking for a different city to live in. In conclusion, I respectfully ask the city staff, the mayor, and the city commissioners give their support to the continuing operations of the HPD and that a new HPO will be hired as soon as practical. Thanks for your consideration, Wayne Deming. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak this evening? Yes? Mr. Mike Yapa. We'll have him fill out a form.
As the board knows, I served on the board for 6 years. I've lived in Sanford now since 2003. We were among the first people to actually meet Miss Dalton here, and we formed a great friendship professionally and just personally. She's a wonderful lady. I think everybody has already stated that the best they possibly can, far better than I can. The only thing I want to ask, and I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction, is who is this developer? I want to know a name. I want to know what they're about. And I want to know, if you're a developer and you're looking at a piece of property in historic Sanford downtown, wouldn't the first person you'd want to talk to is Miss Christine Dalton? Miss Dalton doesn't know who that is. I don't know who it is. And I'm very concerned because another direction we can take is, let's talk about coincidence. And there's a chain of events that has occurred. And I find it very disturbing too. And I'd like to be able to put my fears to rest. And I'm only speaking for myself. But there may be others out there that have the same thoughts. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience this evening that would like to speak? I want to thank everyone this evening that spoke and had the courage to do so. They say that people actually fear public speaking more than death. And it takes a lot of courage to come up here in front of a lot of people and speak what's on your mind and on your heart. It's not easy, and I really appreciate everyone that took the time to do so. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Bonaparte and give him the opportunity to address your concerns and the questions.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'd first like to ask that you read into the record the mayor's comments. The mayor was here. Unfortunately, he had to come in with the head of the agency. He asked that you read this.
I'd be glad to. This is an email from from Mayor Triplett. I received this last week as well. This is a statement, I believe, that was already released to the public and to the newspaper, but I will read it into the record. Please know that as Mayor of Sanford, I stand for and am committed to the historic preservation of our downtown corridor and contributing structures within the residential district. This has not changed over my tenure, either as mayor or as former Community Redevelopment Agency board member or chairman, nor will it. I always tout the benefits of what we have versus what other cities have tried to create with new sticks and mortar every time I talk about Sanford. And as you've heard from me in the past, so goes downtown, so goes the city. Although I cannot speak for the commissioners, I can tell you that the commitment and dedication you have seen in the past will continue into the future. I will not, however, nor will management or staff, discuss internal personnel issues. It is not fair, right, or lawful to the individuals involved. I look forward to our continued work with the Historic Preservation Board, the Historic Sanford Trust, staff members and liaisons, commissioners, and our citizens of the Historic District and beyond. Are there any, did you want to go next, or do you want to ask or invite any other public officials that wanted to speak? I know we have some commissioners, we have Commissioner Williams, we have Commissioner Austin, we have Commissioner Woodruff.
You are the chair, you do as you wish.
Are there any commissioners that would like to come forward and speak? Okay, so do you have the list of questions that came out of the, for Mr. Barnhart? You're recording the questions that the public asked, right?
No, I was just getting he heard all the questions.
Okay, I'm just trying to make it administratively easier for him.
Again, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. Thank you for your service to the city of Sanford. I too want to also take this as an opportunity to thank all the people that came out and all the people that spoke. Truly, this is a demonstration of the commitment that the citizens of Sanford have to a historic preservation. As the mayor read and as city staff, I tell you that we are committed to continuing historic preservation. I've heard reference to a new direction. New direction was referencing the restructuring within the Department of Code Enforcement, Planning, and Building Instructions. It has nothing to do with personnel. We are continuing to be committed to supporting the work of the Historic Preservation Board, as you've heard with the mayor's statement, and also my statement was also put out there. We are committed to historic preservation because we realize the value that it has for our community. We would not be the Sanford that we are without it. I too was at the meeting that Bill Colbert talked about how important the historic functions of the city of Sanford are. My comments are brief in saying that we are committed, we hear you, we hear you, we hear you. I take that very seriously, and I ask that you hold me accountable. We are moving forward, and I would welcome, Madam Chair, your involvement as we look for a replacement to serve the Historic Preservation Board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the job posted?
Okay, so why don't we work on taking a few, are you okay with taking a few questions,
Yes.
the ones you can answer?
Yes.
Okay, that first question I think came from Mrs. Shreve. Ms. Shreve?
Is the job posted?
The challenge is that we have in the city of Sanford, that was pointed out, Christine held the job title of community planner. We do not have a job description of a historic preservation officer. We're in the process now of creating that, and I'd like to get input on that. So we are in the process of putting together job creation, job position for historic preservation board, historic preservation officer, that then we will be recruiting. But we are working on that, and I anticipate that being done very shortly.
What's very shortly? When can we expect to see that one?
I would expect it within 3 weeks.
Okay, and what's gonna happen in the interim?
In the interim, the Historic Preservation Board will be continued to be supported by the planning staff. I understand at the next work session, there could be discussion about what you expect in a report from the staff, but the staff for the planning department is committed to continuing to support the Historic Preservation Board.
That's kind of easy, Norton. What to expect is they can pick up an old report that Christine used to do and use that as a template. So I'm a little confused why staff was confused on what they had to supply to the board this time around. All they have to do is say, this is what they're used to, right?
What I heard was a discussion regarding having a work session so that the Historic Preservation Board makes very clear to the staff what they look for in a report, and it very well may be what you just said.
And I would say you could save a work session and just say, this is what we're used to. We want an outline, and we want it to go back to Estes.
I hear that.
Okay, and so who's responsible for that going forward?
That would be the chair of the Historic Preservation Board with the city staff.
Okay, what city staff?
The Director of Development Services and Planning, Mr. Russ Gibson.
Okay, and as a real estate professional, who do I send people with questions regarding historic preservation?
Mr. Gibson.
Okay?
You have people with questions.
speak to the open to business concept and how that is going to roll out? Is there anything in writing that we can read? Is there a plan that the city has or a draft of a plan that can give us a sense of where we're going with this open to business concept?
The answer to that is yes. I don't have it here, but we did make some organizational changes and we've made some structural changes. The idea was so that people that are within the Historic Preservation Board or with the planning and zoning or builders will be able to have a smoother process. That's what the open for business concept is. It's headed by Mr. Darrell Presley, and it involves planning as well as code enforcement as well as building and permits. So there's been some restructuring within the city within the last couple of months, and that's what that new direction, open for business, to make it easier to do business in the city of Sanford.
So where would we look? Where would we look for that draft of the plan? Is it on the city website? Can you post it somewhere? Where would we begin to see this?
We've had various meetings. There's not a document about being open for business, but we can certainly provide something on the city website about being open for business and what that means to us and our commitment to being a very business-friendly organization.
I just have a question about the packet that was being approved earlier. When there were questions brought up by the board, they were told by a lawyer that the staff passed it, so they need to okay it. So what's to stop this open for business makes me nervous, because open for business means we're gonna let go of some of these things that make it more difficult for businesses. We want business, but it just seems weird that Christine's gone. I've been here 9 years. I don't even know her as a preservation person. You're saying that wasn't even a job. So I just think something's fishy going on here, and I don't understand it.
Well, let's be clear also in separating the Historic Preservation Board and the open for business. Also keeping in mind that the city has the Statute S, or sometimes referred to as the S code, Schedule S. That has not changed. The city is still committed.
Why did they have to stamp off on it? Because the staff said it was okay.
You're asking me about what the attorney said.
Well, I'm just telling you that it's just suspect. Suspect.
The city stands committed, and the city staff must adhere to the code because that has been adopted in our land development regulations. So we have no choice but to adhere to Schedule S.
Right. But something wasn't jiving with the board, and they were told that the staff approved it, so they need to okay it. Did I understand it right? You heard it. Why didn't he speak up?
Mr. Group, can you clarify your, I think there are
Sure,
questions about your comments.
The bottom line is that.
Can you stand up and speak to us?
We can't hear you.
Yeah. The bottom line is when an applicant submits an application, whether it's for rezoning, special exception, variance, certificate of appropriateness, and there's no evidence against that application, that body is a quasi-judicial body, just like a judge. So if there's no evidence against it, they're obligated to approve it. If I go to the building counters with a building permit and I submit it and I'm compliant with all codes, I'm entitled to get that building permit, no matter what the building official thinks about the color of my house, the design of my house, or whatever. I'm entitled to it. That's the only.
But I've had issues with material. You know, when we had to replace 9 windows in the back that were all jalousie windows that had metal on them, we had to replace them with wood. Very expensive for us, and I could have gotten something more efficient, but I understood that, you know, that was the historic. That's what I bought into. That's why I live here. But materials were very important. So if the materials aren't on that, they still have to sign off on it?
What Mr. Gibson testified to during the hearing was that Schedule S would be adhered to in every respect. So Schedule S will be adhered to.
But shouldn't
And-
Schedule S be defended? I mean, if you ask a question and someone has said that Schedule S has been followed, but you have no proof of that, you're still supposed to approve.
Yeah,
But-
you're just supposed to blanketly approve it.
Your professional staff has your professional staff. It's not?
Get a microphone that works, please.
When your professional staff, that's better, isn't it? When your professional staff says it complies with the comp plan, it complies with the land development regulations, complies with Schedule S, that's the evidence. If nobody stands up and says, no, it doesn't, then that body, they are not the ones who put cases for or against anybody. They adjudicate cases based upon the evidence. So unless,
They wanted to have a postponement so that they could verify what they did not have, and you told them they were required to pass it because there's nothing stopping it.
And but also as a quasi-judicial body, they're having to look at what part of the S code. If staff hasn't told them what part of the S code has been approved, they really don't know whether it's S code 1 or S code 3. So that's why it's so important that on staff report, and this is my opinion, and this is how we've been doing it for decades, or not decades, but since, for at least a decade, that when staff reports, they actually cite to the citation in the code so that it's absolutely clear what section of the code is being approved or disapproved.
and that's what's going to be discussed later on.
Right, but I'm saying as far as tonight, there was nothing in there, so how did they
Well,
make a
that's not
decision?
true. The staff report said it complies with Schedule S. That's
What portion of Schedule?
the entirety of Schedule S. I mean,
Okay.
But wait, I think it's really important, and I'm not trying to get to a big debate here, but I want you all to imagine you coming in for a permit. And it's not hard. It's not hard. If you come in and you submitted everything, staff says there's no evidence against why this should be, there's no evidence as to why this should be denied, and you go in front of a body that's supposed to adjudicate your rights, you don't want the judge arguing the case against you. They are the judges. They are the judges.
That's right, they are the judges, not
Johnny,
staff.
the problem is the
Now, hang on. I know you're an attorney, and I appreciate that, and I don't want to debate you, but you're debating me. They are the judges. Judges don't create evidence. Judges are judges. So the only evidence was the staff report. Apparently that you want more. That's going to be discussed.
I think you would agree that the staff report was not up to the standard that we've been
It was
used
an
to.
abbreviated staff report.
I mean, in my opinion, it was.
But
Guys, let's stay on track, please. No, please.
The government's not supposed to argue against applicants. If the government thinks, if the staff thinks that the application is adequate, complies with the comp plan, land development regulations, Schedule S, that is all they need to say.
So then why do we need it? He could have just given them the permission. Why did it come in
Wait,
front of us?
anybody could have, these are public meetings. Someone could have come up and said, no, it doesn't. And there's opposition. Just like in rezoning. We have commissioners here. How many times do you hear pro and con on rezoning, pro and con on comp plan amendments, pro and con on special exceptions, pro and con on conditional uses?
So all I hear
if
is
staff
staff.
recommends that it's okay, why does it go here then? Why doesn't it only go here when something's wrong?
It doesn't.
I'm saying, like, if you're saying, like, if it comes here and the staff already said it's okay, why are we wasting everybody's time? I'm sorry, I think that I'm addressing
No,
Yeah, if you want to speak, you need to get it up to the
Sometimes we don't agree, I can tell you that, Mr. Hank, but he's right. Because the public has the ability to come in and say, don't rezone this property, don't amend the comp plan, don't grant this COA, because I'm against it for this reason.
So if nobody shows up and they
That's, I mean, you know, how many of y'all have gone to Citizens Academy? How many of y'all have heard my spiel about appearing at meetings, and if you don't appear, you can't complain? And that's, you know, if you don't come and oppose something that you're opposed to, then you don't have the right to complain. Because because things should, an applicant has an entitlement. If I want a building permit and I submit a complete building permit, I'm entitled to it. I can.
May I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
How long have you been overseeing, being the legal support for this preservation board?
Let Margina ask the last question, then we'll continue.
Off and on for I don't know how long.
Because this feels like new direction to me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always been the case.
Well, I haven't seen you guide the board. I've seen many times where I have seen Christine make a recommendation for or against, and they've operated just like they have.
Okay, hang on
They're
just
judges, they're asking questions. so
Hang on
that
one
they can
second.
clarify
How
things.
many times have I told you, if you're going to deny an application, you have to state the basis for it and the evidence you're supporting?
It's true. I do think there's two different conversations, because what it is that we weren't looking to deny or looking for evidence to deny. That's totally not what we're here for. And Mr. Groot has always been instrumental in helping us, guide us into making good legal decisions, and for that we're very grateful. But the staff report, in my opinion, was not detailed to the standard we have been told we would expect. We were told, when this went down last week, I was told by Mr. Presley, that this will not change. You will receive the same support you have always received. And then you guys had one item and one chance, and you screwed it up. It was not up to the standard. You had one shot at proof that you couldn't do this. It wasn't labeled. It was incomplete, and there was no photos. The applicant stood up here probably feeling attacked, and it wasn't fair to her. The drawings that we received in the packet, one of the board members didn't get a packet. The first set of drawings we got had no dimensions on them. It was not acceptable. And I don't feel that it's fair for me to be asked to just rubber stamp something. And I'm sorry that I had to make an example out of this. It's uncomfortable for me to stand here and have these conversations. I have nothing but respect for everyone that works here and in this seat. I really enjoyed my time here. But I have to speak out because this is not right.
Madam Chair, it's very clear that the report you received today was insufficient, and that is why, as I understood, you were going to have a work session. Certainly, we can take what has been done in the past, but it is staff's obligation to give you, the board, all the information you feel you need to make a decision. You said that did not happen today, and that is something that we will correct.
And I really hate to think that I have to waste more of my time sitting in a work session, having to tell them how to do something that they've been doing right for 13 years. Every staff report that we've had has been prepared by a competent, credentialed historic preservation officer. And even when she was on vacation, she prepared the reports beforehand and made sure they were done. Sometimes we've had Mr. Gibson leading the meeting and helping us, and he's always been very helpful and great at what he does too, but I don't think it's fair to put those duties on him. That's not his job. And he doesn't have the background to do it effectively. And I don't, it's like asking me to stand up here and give a legal opinion. I'm not. I'm a human resources.
You can do that if you like.
Yeah, it's not going to be worth much. But, I've spent a lot of time, and I'll be frank with you, the last week and a half has been very difficult for me because I feel like I've been doing your job. Citizens have been reaching out to me. I have not been able to give my full attention to my children or my own career, my own job, because I've had phone calls, emails, texts. People are concerned, they're worried, they're upset, and what's going on? Nobody's responding to me, nobody's answering anything, and it's fallen on me as people reach out to me because I'm their friend or their neighbor, and they know that I have this position. So it's been a really tough, week and a half for me having to deal with that. And now you're asking me to sit in a work session and tell them how to do a staff report. I don't have time for that. Mr. Bowden,
record, and I want to make sure that this person that you hire is just as qualified, that has those credentials and qualifications, and not someone just out of college who likes old buildings. It needs to be someone super qualified, I think, for all of us to be happy. And two, open for business. I don't know what that means to leadership, but opens for business to me means answer my tell your employees to pick up the phone so that when people like me, I called a department, and I'm not gonna say what department, and left a message one day. I got a call back 3.5 days later. The thing had already, I worked it out, but I had no return call. And I didn't just call once and leave a message. I think I made 3 phone calls. To me, that's unacceptable.
I would agree.
And that's not a win for business.
I agree.
You know, I also want to state, we're all on the same team here. You know, I'm not the enemy, you're not the enemy. Your success is my success, and my neighbors and friends and other citizens of Sanford, all of Sanford, not just the historic district. We're on the same team here. So we need to figure out how to make this right and undo the enormous wrong that has been done and figure it out, make it right.
And again, and I want to end by, my end is going to be to say that there are also amazing people that work in the city. I don't want you to think that we're up here saying Christine Dalton was the only great employee of the city, because that's not true. But man, if you're going to fire her for whatever reason it is, I can just probably give you a little list.
Mrs. Brunson in the audience has been waiting patiently to ask a question.
Yes, and that's not one of my strong suits. City Manager, I'd like to ask, go back, because I just heard 2 things, community planner and preservation officer. And I think I heard you say that they should be 2 people or 2 different job descriptions. I got a little lost in that. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to put this in what Christine's job really was. I thought she was a preservation person, and it just kind of helped me out to understand what you just said about job descriptions. She had to have had a job description. She's been there 13 years. So help me with that, please.
Sure, and I appreciate the question. I want to make sure it's clear. What I said is that the city does not now have a job description for historic preservation officer. Christine was hired as the community planner, and she took on the responsibilities of historic preservation. But as we go to recruit, we want to make it very clear that we're looking for a historic preservation officer. So we're in the process of creating that job description.
Okay. She was doing the historic preservation officer's job description. Is that what I'm hearing?
She was doing the function. There is no job description now.
Okay, she was doing the function. That means then you were not paying her to be historic preservation officer.
She was hired as a community planner.
I understand that. 13 years ago. And since that time, she has taken on historic preservation officer and other duties. And all I'm trying to understand is why then, if she was already doing it, even though the city didn't have a job description, why did we terminate her, or you, or whoever? Why not just go ahead and write a job description for the person who's already there doing the work?
Yes.
Doing a great job.
As was indicated, we're not going to discuss personal matter, but we're looking at moving forward, and that's why we're making a job description specifically historic preservation officer. So we hired the person, so it has the criteria. You heard some from Mr. Rich Heisenberg. We're looking for making sure that that's in the job description, so that when we recruit, the persons that are applying know exactly what we're looking for.
Norton, maybe I can help on that.
Please, because you know what? If you're going to do a job description,
I think here might be the confusion. If this doesn't help, I'm sorry. Christine, like Mr. Bonaparte said, was hired in a job position as an employee, as community planner.
I understand that part.
Okay, hang on. Okay, good. There was never a position in the personnel plan of the city that said historic preservation officer.
Okay.
So at some point in time, I forgot when at some point in time, when Tom George was acting city manager, he and Christine determined to have a historic preservation officer function, but not as a line employee like funded in the budget, but under a contract. Okay? So they just entered a contract so that she would have that function.
I got that contract.
So once the contract's over, this goes to what you were saying. The only position that's left really in city government is community planner. So now you're gonna create a position, right? There you
wait a minute, please. I told you I was gonna stop.
I don't like people.
You don't like that? Anyway, here's the deal. She and somebody went into a contract arrangement. And when did that contract end? And I remember when you had the.
That's what Mr. Bonaparte was saying. It was determined a week ago, whatever it was, to conclude the contract, and that's what Mr. Bonaparte's not gonna get into the details.
Okay, I don't want you to do anything to get you in trouble,
the
but I
contract
need to understand. No, I really do need to understand if the contract was just cut away, period. We're not gonna do that anymore. Because she was serving as a historic preservation officer, or she was not doing her job as a community planner.
That's what Mr. Bonaparte, and I'm speaking for you, if you don't mind. That's what he's not gonna get into, is the details. He's just gonna say the contract ended, Christine got her severance, as I recall, some amount of severance, and that's over. Now they're gonna create a position to actually go out and recruit a line item position, budgeted historic preservation officer, right?
That part I understand. I don't understand though, if we had somebody that could do it, why we gotta say bye-bye, and, we know better. Thank you so much for trying.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, we got a lot of questions, and I want to make sure everyone has a chance to ask. So I saw Mr. Chesmere hand first, and then behind him is next.
I just wanted to make sure I understood you correctly. You said that it's a restructuring. Is that correct?
There has been some restructuring between planning, code enforcement, and building permits.
Okay. So in the restructuring, you guys restructured planning, building, without knowing what the job description is for the person that you terminated. Is that correct?
We are in the process of creating a specific job description
yes.
for historic preservation.
That's a yes, because you didn't know what her position was when you terminated her.
Certainly we knew what her functions were, and we want to incorporate that into a city job description.
Okay, right behind Mr. Ms. Jacobson. Could you come forward to the podium? I'm going to ask that all the speakers come to the podium just so that we can hear well and give you a chance to be heard.
Don't wake me by myself, Mr. Bonaparte. I have a new question and a new direction to
Just
go.
step up to the mic, and then if you would just state your name and address for the record, please.
Sarah Jacobson, and I live at 1203 East Seminole Boulevard, Sanford. I have a throat problem, so put up with my rough sound, please. I too was very fond of Christine, and everybody here has spoken in favor of what an outstanding job she did. My interest is maybe, I'm fully behind that, but I'd like to see a switch in conversation to something else. Sanford got put, downtown Sanford, and part of the residential neighborhood got put on the National Register of Historic Sites in Washington, D.C. back in the 1970s. I got that idea. I led that movement. I was tickled pink that it came through and that we had such powerful recognition. And we started building on that recognition. We started on First Street and changed buildings to make them comply with the rules of what the original building might have looked like. None of us really knew a lot, like Christine did. None of us knew that kind of information to know what to do and where to go and how to do it. We just did, we punted. And we had some good punts, and we came along good. Finally, Christine came on board, and she helped it go farther. What happens without the knowledge of what really needs to be done, the neighborhood has expanded tremendously. Downtown is expanding tremendously. Historic preservation cannot survive alone. It has to have master leadership. It has to have master guidance, master response to what people want to do. And if we don't have that from an extremely knowledgeable person who's familiar with our S-codes, who's familiar with everything we're doing to not only stay afloat, but start growing, we're in trouble. So my question is, and this is where I'm changing the direction of the conversation for a bit, what are we doing in the meantime while we have no historic preservation expert? What are we doing? How are we handling the requests to do things to the properties? How are we knowing we're going to keep them in their holy spirit of the historic personality that they were born with?
Just like as we stated, the S code is here. It is the law. And the planning department is charged with enforcing it. And they will continue to do so.
Are they knowledgeable? You have to have the knowledge to do it. That's the part. Thank you.
Okay.
That's my thing.
Thank you. All right, with the gentleman in the clear glasses is next. And then we'll go from there.
Hello, my name is Barry Kirsch. I've been a resident here for almost 3 years. I spent my 40-plus year career as an investigative photojournalist, and that means I would not only photograph different stories, but I would do investigative journalism behind it. And one of the first things that I was told when I started at 17, my boss pulled me aside and said, listen, follow the money. You want to know how anything works anywhere in the world? Follow the money. If it's a hurricane or something, you can't control the hurricane, but everything that happens after that, follow the money. So I'm looking at this, and the hair on the back of my neck is going up. And I see, possibly coincidentally, we have a new business direction, right? Nobody knows really exactly where it came from and whose idea it was to go this way. And then we have our historic district where most of us live, right? And I moved here from Winter Park, and I've seen when, historic homes went away because we had a new business direction, right? They just destroyed that place. I lived there for 30 years. And, it's in the name of business, right? So you have Christine, who is sort of like a gatekeeper, right? And whether her power was literally to be a gatekeeper or not, she was the voice that we all came to rely on as someone who really looked out for our best interests, right? Now, we all want business to be here because you can't have a beautiful community, you can't have a city without revenue generated by business. But at the same time, here's a new direction, here's our homes, here's somebody who's kind of like in the middle, and like you are as well, and then suddenly they're gone. Now, I know we have the S codes are the law, but laws are made, and laws can be repealed, replaced. And usually when good laws get pushed aside, it's because somebody with some financial interest wants that pushed aside. I don't want a 7-Eleven on the corner of my neighborhood, right? Or I don't want somebody branding this thing and they're building a giant hotel right in the middle of a historic district. It doesn't belong here. I don't care if it looks exactly like the Grand Mackinac, Michigan. It doesn't belong here, right? The buildings that were built here belong here. The buildings that were added as residential units, like Leon and Tom's house, they fit the look of our community. My feeling is that we're talking about this debacle that happened here today, but that's kind of glossing over what's really at the bottom of this. There's something underneath all of this that's making this happen, right? I moved here from Winter Park. The last really major assignment I had was I covered the Trayvon Martin thing, 451 days. photographed you making speeches. I photographed every single thing that happened here. I was one of the very first journalists here. I covered every last thing. And while all my compatriots from around the world were saying, well, you know, Sanford is, you know, it's in turmoil and all this is going on, and I covered every one of those markers. I was in them. I ran backwards 100 miles an hour because this is the fastest marching town I've ever seen. But then I would see, as the marches were going on, people would hold up my sign, they'd go run over to a police officer, hey, how you doing, you know, da-da-da-da-da. You know, see you in church on Sunday, okay, we'll be there, let's go fishing afterwards. All right. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, a town that's split up doesn't do that. And so when my wife said, it's time to move, and I go, okay, she says, no, I mean right now? I said, okay, we're going to Sanford. You know, 4 hours later, we had a house. Really, 4 hours. So I love it here. I like the historic district. I like what it stands for. But that's also a huge magnet for people with, or corporations with money that can come in and capitalize on that. And there's two ways to do it. One is to join us and make us better. The other way is to just kind of mosey on in and build your thing and just kind of push your way around and push it out. And to me, I just get that feeling that there's something that we haven't even talked about yet. There's something underneath this move that all these things, yeah, it could be coincidental. It just doesn't seem, you know, something's not quite right in my eyes. And I think we need to find out exactly whose idea was it to go in a new direction, right? Because you said it was several different departments. Well, who said, well, let's go in a different direction? And who put that thought in their head? Was it somebody from, you know, some ABC company or whatever? We don't know that. You know, that's going to go a long way. Finding out where all this came from, first of all, is going to go a long way to letting us know where we're going to end up. And that's all I have to say.
Madam Chair, it's a good opportunity to talk about. First, the restructuring that took place a couple of months ago was in a report that a management company made for the city of Sanford about 3 years ago. They made that recommendation that we look at restructuring to make the city more efficient. The Open for Business has been going on for at least a year and a half. We've been continuing that, so that's not new. What has new is physically following the recommendation of that study to put planning, code enforcement, and building permits under one person to help coordinate that activity.
Who's that one person now?
Darrell Preston.
Has he gone through management training?
What's his background, his resume? Can we see
He-
that on the city website?
He has been with the city for a number of years. He's the former deputy police chief.
Has he gone through management training?
He has had supervisory training.
How many plans has the city
So,
paid for
what are we gonna do?
about restructuring?
Oh, questions come to the dais so we can hear. Sorry. Thank you.
Hi, Robin Esser. How many plans has the city paid for in the last 10 years about restructuring the city? How many different plans are there?
One.
There's just one.
One that I'm aware of.
There hasn't been previous ones.
Not that I'm aware of. Since I've been here, one.
Okay, how long have you been?
7 years.
Okay. So does anybody know how many city plans there has been made in the last 15 years here?
I bet somebody knows.
There's been more than one. My next question has to do with who's next. If there's restructuring, one person is not the linchpin in all of this unless it is to remove, as the gentleman spoke, the guardian. So are there going to be more rearrangements or personnel changes that we should expect from people that we've come to rely on in the city? And that's my question.
At this point, there are no immediate plans for any other changes. I reserve the right to make changes.
So I know you're working on the historic preservation officer job description, and we'll be looking to hire that in the next 3 weeks. What about the community planner position? What will be happening with that?
The plan is to use the funds for that position for the historic preservation officer.
2 jobs into 1.
Which is what we had.
So you're just changing the title.
We are creating a position specifically to do the functions of the historic preservation officer.
I was just wondering as well who would handle the Public Arts Commission. My understanding is that Christine was over that as well. So it sounds like at this point we're aware of 3 positions that Christine held, and she was very knowledgeable. So I think we all just want assurances that you're going to be hiring a person that can handle all of that workload. And I would just encourage you to consider whether or not it would be wise to combine historic preservation officer position, community planning, as well as the Public Arts Commission, because that's a lot of work. And I think we're on the radar. We've got great things that can happen in Sanford. I don't want to be Winter Park. I don't want to be College Park. I want to be Sanford. I want to be all we can be. I want to honor our heritage from the African American community to the community,
Speak into the mic,
to the community as a whole. I mean, we need to acknowledge everyone and make sure we have resources to honor that. So you have support, you've got a good team that's ready to go. And I think we just all cared about Christine so much and just had such confidence in her. And I know I could go to her and get information on what I needed to do to comply with the S code. And I worked with her over and over again. It was just so appreciative to her knowledge and the board. And it's just been a lovely, lovely process and experience. And we just have a lot of angst about that. And with 3 positions to fulfill, and I don't know what else she was doing, but I know her resume is very long. Just know we are looking for assurances. We're going to want information. We're going to come back to you with respect, but we're going to come back because we want to be the best Sanford we can be. And I've had so many people say, why on earth do you live in Sanford? It's so dangerous. It's so this, it's so that. The people here are lovely, lovely. Everyone, every community, Goldsboro, Sanford Historic District, Georgetown, just amazing, wonderful, sweet people. And I just want to pull together and do the right thing. And we are just utterly traumatized and disturbed and just have lost the person we have looked to for help. And we believed in her, and it's going to be big shoes to fill. And I would just encourage you to have a body of people in the neighborhood, residents, developers. We had really wonderful developers that came in here to speak with us, members of the city commission. I mean, just a wide group of people so we could take it to the next level and be amazing, because we have it in us. And I defended Sanford when we had the Trayvon Martin incident. I know everyone was doing the best they could. It was a terrible incident. Trayvon Martin should have never died. It was horrible. Like, the whole thing was just horrible, horrible. But I don't think we want to go down the road of tearing the community apart. So I think we've got to pull it together, and we're going to need information from you on. We're just going to need assurances over and over, because there's a lot of trust that's been lost. So I just appreciate you continuing to listen to us openly.
Yes. Thank you.
The questions are probably kind of boring. So the new historic preservation officer position, I think I heard you say that the budget for that would be the same budget that was allocated for Christine's prior position?
The budget line.
The budget line, okay. And then for Christine's ancillary responsibilities outside of historic preservation, that will be filled by a new role, and that role will be labeled the community planner?
No.
Okay, that's what I need some clarification with.
Christine was hired as a community planner, and as Mr. Boone indicated, there came a time when she got a contract with the city to serve as historic preservation officer.
Now that contract, was it under an employment contract, or was that under an independent contractor contract?
Employee contract.
Okay, thank you.
Therefore, that was her function. What we're looking to do is to create a position so we can advertise and go out into the market to get, as you all said, the very best that we're able to get, and to attract Sanford.
time that Christine took on those new responsibilities, any other ancillary responsibilities was shifted to another city employee?
No,
Okay.
that didn't matter. That was before I was here.
Okay, thank you.
Another question?
Hi, my name is Lacey, and I live outside of the historic district. Mine's like a two-part question. So about the S codes, and which is what I said to the gentleman next to me. If the staff approves it, what is the point of the board? Like Ms. Maria, I'm also a realtor, and I know that when people pull permits and they sign off on a roof, is it always done right? Or did the person just sign off on it? Sometimes they just signed off on it, it's not done correctly. So I feel like that's the position that they look over. Is that not true?
That's not true.
So they are supposed to be approving this. So what was done today, and I have never met Christine, but I kind of feel like I wish I was her best friend. But it almost kind of sounds like it was just like they came in, she was fired, and we're going to slap this together, and we're going to give it to them, and just hope they push it along. So my question is that, like they said, is that going to be, is that going to be better prepared, next time? And my other question is, with the changes, with letting this one person go, obviously she's, held a lot of responsibilities, but that's, for our job as realtors, for small businesses, things like that, that affects their business. So how, over this time, because you're gonna have to decide, what this job description is, it's gonna take a while to fill that position. What is gonna happen with these businesses, and is a developer coming in? Is this something that's public record that we can take a look at without, having a meeting till 8 o'clock at night? So I guess two-part question.
Let me first respond to the last part, and I think maybe you mentioned the word developer. The only developer that the city is dealing with now is Sanford Waterfront Partners, and Rich was here today. There is no other developer that we're dealing with. There's no other development that's being proposed except for Sanford Waterfront Partners Heritage Park.
So, and I have a quick question. So, no one in the planning department, no one, Tom George, none of these people have met with a developer that's interested. And I'm just trying for you to clear up rumors, right? Because we want clarity.
Right.
And of course, this is a small town, although we're 50-something thousand, but it's a small community. So it's rumors that there's a developer waiting to buy up that chamber, tear down that civic center, do a development, and it's actually waiting for Heritage Park to fail so that they can swoop it up.
That
That's
statement was
false
made
then.
by someone in the building department.
Right, so I want you to assure us that that's not true. And I think that's what all these little developer questions are, because that's the rumor.
Right. The
So there
city
you
was
go.
approached through Tom George with somebody that expressed an interest in that property. We took that to the city commission, and the city commission said, no, let's hold on, and we'll have further discussions. What the thought was if somebody is interested in that for commercial in the parking lot, then maybe we should go out for bid to see who was interested, so it's a fair playing field. We just can't give it to a developer.
Right, okay. Well, now you cleared it up. I think it needed to be cleared up, because I know that's where all these little questions are coming from.
Will you tell us the name of the developer?
The person that came to Mr. George, I don't know, I wasn't in that meeting. But that was only to say they're interested. We took it to the city commission to say, if there's people interested, let's open it up. And the commission said, well, let's hold on that. So I said, okay.
And we don't need to talk about that tonight. That's a totally different topic.
Yeah, but there is no developer we've been talking to say, let's go forward.
Unless the conversations have happened without you being privy to them.
But they would still have to come to the city commission.
We would hope. But we saw last week that sometimes they're not in the know. Sometimes they find out after the fact.
That was a meeting that took place, and it was shared with the city commission.
My concerns, and I mentioned this in my statement, is just that you can say the law is on the books all you want, but if it's not enforced, it's worthless. And I I saw an example, and you and I talked on the phone, and I told you about that example, and I went back to find the email, and I had already copied you on it, but, where the board was, directed through, Christine was directed to sign off on things, or the board was, proper action wasn't taken, because the applicant's buddies with somebody at City Hall, or, they don't feel like they have to follow the process. And these are the things that I'm not privy to. I don't work there, and the only reason I would even find out these things is when I meet with Christine, and she informs me, here's the facts of this that you're gonna be voting on, and I ask questions and she clarifies it, but there's things that go on behind the scenes, that a building can be torn down because the city doesn't feel like being in the title chain, and they think they can tear it down without going before this board. And just because it may have EPA problems. I mean, these are things that would never come to us, that could be too late. Maybe I'm going for a jog down Palmetto and I see a bulldozer. And if you can't trust the person that you call to report those things, then what? Those are questions for you. I mean, you're our leader, so we look to you to answer those questions and to lead.
Certainly this evening has demonstrated the commitment of the Historic Preservation Board, the residents of the city of Sanford, and staff takes that very seriously and will be held accountable.
I have a quick question, and thank you for standing up here and taking these questions. I heard you say streamline the process was part of this reorganization. That is what my radar went up on. Streamline the process. Can you explain that?
Specifically, what we're looking at doing is having a approach that there's a straight line, so that if a person comes to do a building permit, that they go to the building department, planning department, they get everything done, and so it's not as confusion, so that there is a process in place, so that it's not just give and take person that may or may not get to it. That's the streamlining we're talking about, so that there's like a Gantt chart that we go this way, this way, this way, so that is service. That's to open for business.
How's that different than it was?
Well, we're working on making it even better. We have meetings where we bring in developers that have had challenges with the city to say, where did you have the holdup? And then maybe the time that it was with building permit, and with building permit, why did it take so long? So we're continually looking at how we can improve the process.
I would be careful, cautious of that feedback, because some people are just angry that they had to even ask or follow Schedule S. I saw a comment online of all places, but a person that was extremely disturbed that her contractor had to wait an hour to replace her air conditioning unit because Christine asked questions. Oh well, that was her job. 1 hour, that contractor was just terribly inconvenienced.
That's not the kind of streamlining we're talking about.
Right, but people are gonna, if you're asking these people,
Okay, I hear that, but what we're looking for is other information in terms of what would make this process go smoother. Maybe fast is not the right term, but smoother.
Right. Well, I have some feedback. What would make our meeting smoother is to get a qualified historic preservation officer to prepare the staff report.
I hear that.
And not make me have to tell them how to do it.
Can I ask a question?
Maria has a question.
So I'm sitting here listening and I'm trying to connect the dots. And you've continued to say that you're restructuring and you've let one person go to streamline the system.
No, that's not what I said.
That's what I heard.
Okay.
And so I go down the path of we're streamlining the system because we're going to remove the person who's paying attention. And that's what I think is happening, Norton. And I think a lot of people in this room think that's what is happening. And you continue to work on it, Norton. I've worked with you for many years as chairman of the CRA. And you talk the talk, but nothing happens. And my biggest concern, and I'm sorry, I am just speaking, and I think I'm speaking for this room. I think you're telling us bullshit, and I think there's something going on. And it's really a shame. I put out on next door, and this is how I really feel. You're the farmer that killed the goose with the golden egg.
My name is Alec Tin. I live on 1019 Magnolia Avenue. I've been here 25 years. And for your purpose, and perhaps some who haven't met me yet, I did serve on the HPB for many years, and I also served as chairman of the HPB for many years. So I have a number of questions, because preservation is why I'm here, why my wife and I bought here. So I didn't get to this meeting early enough because I was tied up in my own meeting. However, some quick questions, and pretty much you don't even need to go far away. They're going to be yes and no, and I'm just going to see where we can go with this. First, I am going to assume, and you're going to say yes or no, I am assuming that Ms. Dalton was removed for personnel reasons, not for anything to do with the historic preservation role. Yes or no?
It was a personnel decision.
Thank you. With what I've heard tonight, you are working on a job description, and I think it is well, it's a good idea, of course, but it's odd to me that that hasn't been made already since someone has been serving in that role for so long. However, the quick questions are, I heard that the promise was that the HPB would be presented the same quality of work for the staff reports, and apparently one item came up tonight, correct me if I'm wrong, but I got here like one item came up and it did not come close to the standards that they had come to expect and need. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
All right. Is there a solution to that, sir, in the meantime before we get a HBO?
Yes, and that is for staff, the planning staff, to make sure that the reports they provide to the Historic Preservation Board have the information that the board thinks it needs to make a decision.
Is the planning staff Russ Gibson, or is the planning staff the collection of people working in planning?
It is the collection of people working in planning.
Whose name was on the staff report this time? Was it Russ Gibson?
I did not see the staff report.
Okay. Russ, did you prepare the staff report?
Yes, I did,
Thank
along
you.
with others.
In my time on the HPB, there was something called, and I'm sure it's still there, administrative approval. Is that correct?
I'm sorry. repeat the question.
Administrative approval of applications?
You
As
mean
in
in-house?
items, well, there's in-house that meet S codes, and then there's administrative approval, which is a little bit more nebulous, and a staff member could approve. And while I served on the HPB, and again as chairman of the HPB later, those administrative approvals were not done correctly. So I'm asking, while we wait for an HPO, will there be an increase to assist in streamlining administrative approval of applications of C of A's?
That's something I'd have to get with Mr. Gibson on.
I would love an answer.
Alec, if I may call it that, good to see you. The board, the Schedule S regulations provide for 2 levels of applications for certificates of appropriateness. Those that, as you referenced, can be considered administratively. They're also referenced as minor reviews, and all of these, the applications that are approved administratively are presented to the Historic Preservation Board as they were this evening. There were 36 of them that the board has copies of and are able to review and verify that the applications that are under the review of staff are being administered appropriately. So the codes provide for the scope of what types of applications can be considered administratively versus those that have to go before the board, as was the case with the item this evening. Now, I acknowledge and take responsibility for the fact that I did not provide the level of detail that has historically been provided to the board. I only suggested a work session. I do respect the fact that that is not necessary to provide or continue to provide the level of information that the board needs to perform their requirements for those matters that require their consideration. So I hope I've answered your question.
Sort of. Yeah. I appreciate your answer. The Historic Preservation Board has always been involved. Let me go back a little. The Historic Preservation Board are volunteers. They're volunteers, and I assume it is still considered a quasi-judicial board?
Absolutely.
All right. they are putting in their own time to serve this city. When staff don't rise to the level that they require, I question the value the city puts on this board. Now, that's not a question, that's just my observation. The board has been downsized, yes, is that right? How many members on the board now?
5.
5, thank you. Is there any plan on reducing the number on the board?
No.
Okay, is there any thought to eliminating the board?
No.
Is there any thought that the board will not be involved in any updates and renewals of the S codes in coming years?
No, that I'm aware of.
Who would be aware of that?
Well, you asked in coming years.
Yes,
I
yes.
can talk about today.
Not that you're aware of. All right. Are there a lot of developers that say, I sure wish there was no historic district so that we could do what we want to do?
Not to me.
Not to you. Very good. I want to make sure that the board, the volunteers, the citizens of this city who give of their time and dire, short family time to serve this city, to keep it the way, not necessarily to keep it the way it was, but to keep the spirit of it that attracted them here in the first place. I want some assurance that preservation and these districts are not under scrutiny for downsizing or reducing the codes to make them more compliant with current building codes and current development plans. I want this city to embrace the economic engine the 30 years of the historic preservation district has brought this city. And I think everybody here wants to make sure that they came to the right place, that they were here because of the district. And I don't mean everybody in Sanford, but I think you understand my meaning. Do not take any of that away from these people who have sunk their lives and their money into these homes, whose values have gone up steadily, one big crash notwithstanding. But I don't know of anything this city has that is of more value than the maintaining and advertising and promoting the historic district, the downtown. I can't think of anything. Other than you could say the waterfront, but you already screwed that up by putting a retirement home on there, not using it to its best value. Let's not do the same with the historic district. It has huge value, and it cannot be compromised. That's the last of my questions, and that wasn't a question. Thank you.
Another question.
I promise this will be my last question. Earlier you'd mentioned that that you were streamlining the 3 departments, and that's why you all decided to eliminate the position.
No, I did not say that.
Okay, then I misunderstood you. So could you explain why we eliminated the position?
It's a personal matter, and the streamlining had nothing to do with eliminating that position.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to bring back to an actual item from Tammy, just about having an advisory board. Hello, I'm Christina Hollerbach, and now that we're winding down to, I want to address Tammy's original question in her first proposal about actionable items from this point. You know, I respect that it's a personnel issue and we can't discuss it. The damage has already been done. What are we doing to move forward? And one of Tammy's suggestions was an advisory board to help the city with the process of re-describing this job and the recruitment of such. So how can we move that forward?
My comment was that I welcome Tammy's involvement in the process. Did you hear me say that?
You did say that, and I just want to take it a step further. I love the idea of, I know there was an advisory board to hire, I think your role, city manager, and there's one for police chief, and I know that this role is not necessarily on that same level, but I think it would be really great to have a citizens advisory board and I would love to be a part of it, given the opportunity, and maybe invite other stakeholders from the city to help give their input to help you out as well. But I did appreciate you did answer that, and I really appreciated the opportunity to be part of that, and because considerations there. I also want to say, I really don't mean for anything that I've said tonight to be an attack on Mr. Gibson. He does great work. This is not his job. If someone gave me a task and said, you have a week to learn how to do this, and this thing you've never done before, and I would probably not do it very well. So, or I might have missed something. So this is not in any way, shape, or form. This is a great guy. He's great for the city. I respect him. He's not a historic preservation officer. He doesn't have the credentials, doesn't have the background, but he did the best he could. I do want to state that.
Well, let me say, I helped screw that report up too, so.
Oh, thanks a lot.
No, seriously, and it was a legally sufficient staff report. It may not have the detail that y'all wanted, but it was legally sufficient staff report.
Legally sufficient, it
yeah.
probably was. I just couldn't, it wasn't detailed enough for me to really feel comfortable.
We got that, yeah.
Right. All right, is there any other, Mr.
I'm sorry again, I apologize for being late. A simple question, I just understood you to say that you are going to be at least considered as the position is being interviewed?
Oh, no, as part of, and I do not have the credentials for that, nor would I ever want that job ever in a million years. I have asked if I can be part of the selection process for the new person.
Understood.
Yeah.
Why is the board not, why is it just the
I mean, perhaps the board, I put it in my opening statement, but I would love to have all board members involved.
Very good.
And I think it would be helpful to have certain members from the community that are also stakeholders or business owners or people who have valuable input as well. I think it would be really valuable, but most definitely would love to see the entire board involvement if Mr. Bonaparte would allow it.
All right, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions at this time?
Well, I have just one quick one.
Okay, come on up.
And this may have been asked while I was outside and then I got blocked out and couldn't come back in. Norton, I'm just curious. We're going to fill
Speak into the mic, please.
Sorry. We're going to fill Christine's position. And my understanding, or the consensus seems to be that it's going to take 3 positions to do that. And I think this would be a great opportunity for you to explain to the citizens how that is fiscally responsible when we already had somebody that was qualified. And do you feel that maybe this may have been a mistake?
We have one position that we have the ability to fund. Christine was doing lots of different things. We're looking at funding a historic preservation officer position.
And are you going to fill her other position that she was originally hired for as a planner?
That is not the intent.
Okay.
Mr. Bonaparte, would you speak into the microphone? I don't think we all heard that.
The question was that there's one position that's been vacated, and it is the city's intent to fill one position.
So where's the extra work gonna get picked up?
That is a discussion with Mr. Gibson in terms of the planning staff.
And can we expect something on the website to identify how that's gonna be handled?
Let me work on that.
Thank you. And as you know, I was your greatest advocate on the advisory board that was vetting you for city manager.
And I thank you.
It was my privilege and it was an honor. And I'd also like to be on that board, advisory board, looking for a new preservation officer. Because I've been here a long time and the last thing I want to see is trading a diamond for a cubic zirconia.
Can you talk into the mic, please?
Yeah, the last thing I want to see happen in historic Sanford is trade off a diamond for a cubic zirconia. Because a lot of people like cubic zirconias, but there are tons of them. We have diamonds here, and that's where the value is, and that's what attracts people here, as you heard from most of the citizens today. This is unique. This is something different. This is what Baldwin Park and Celebration aspired to be, only with foam and synthetic stucco. They can't do it. You can't have history without history.
That's right.
So we have value. It needs to be protected. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I appreciate you coming out. Is there anything else?
Closing statement. Madam Chairman, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen of Sanford, I want to reemphasize the importance that the city administration puts on historic preservation in the city of Sanford. You are serving, as was already noted, on a volunteer basis. You give up your time because it's important to you. It is a really nice day outside, I think, but you all decided to be in here because it's important to you. That is certainly not lost on us. So we are committed to supporting the Historic Preservation Board. We are committed to supporting Schedule S. We are committed to restoring the preservation aspect that makes Sanford such a great community. And I just want to reemphasize that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right.
May I just say one thing? I'd
Sure.
like to compliment our city manager for not having passed out under all this really hard drilling.
Yes, I know that wasn't easy to endure, and I appreciate it. I commend him as well. All right. I want to thank everyone that came tonight, whether you live here, or you came far and wide, or you arrived on an airplane, or I really could not express my appreciation enough, and for all that you do here, I thank you. Meeting is adjourned.